Chapter 1879. Faced with the female version of Wang Zhen who was pregnant with Tuanzi, Lu Qingyi's expression was extremely complicated. Although having a child had been part of her and Wang Zhen's plans after they fell in love, she hadn't expected it to be so early. Furthermore, the one who was pregnant wasn't her, but Wang Zhen himself. The most important thing now is to find a way to go back. Otherwise, if I stay here for too long, I'll really have to give birth. Wang Zhen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He took a few deep breaths to stabilize the baby, but the mask of pain on his face was still very obvious. He had a feeling that something would happen to this child soon. If that really happened, it wouldn't be a joke. Wang Zhen couldn't imagine that a man like him would have to experience the pain of childbirth. According to the original diary trajectory, as long as the Four Emperors assembly was successfully completed, they would be able to directly return to the modern world. But now that the diary trajectory had been disrupted, the original ending of the Four Emperors assembly would also change, and many other complicated trajectories might even emerge. Even if the Four Emperors assembly went on smoothly, whether they could go back after completing their mission would be a problem. It was precisely because of this child in his belly that Wang Zhen had been focusing almost all his attention on it these days, and had no time to think about anything else. No matter how beautiful this holy girl of Holystone Church was, Wang Zhen wasn't in the mood to admire her at all, let alone have any lewd thoughts about this body. Of course, this was also thanks to Lu Qingyi's strict discipline. Although the two of them had transmigrated into different people's bodies, they still knew each other very well. At the same time, Lu Qingyi had full trust in Wang Zhen, and felt that he would never do anything to let her down. Ah, that's great. Lotus Sun couldn't help but feel envious, even though she knew very well that this wasn't the time to be envious. As Wang Ling had expected, these two snake women were on their side, and had both transmigrated from the modern world. Snake woman number 1, Lu Qingyi, had already revealed her identity, but at that moment, Snake woman number 2 suddenly laughed and looked at Lotus Sunday. Since you've guessed Sister Qingyi's identity, can you guess mine? Lotus Sun replied with a smile. You're Taoist priest Yu Yueqing, right? Seeing that her identity had been revealed, Yu Yueqing looked like she was asking for trouble. Oh, I clearly haven't known you for long, so how do you know me so well? You were able to guess my identity immediately. Lotus Sun smiled. Taoist Yu has an elegant temperament. Even if you enter this snake woman's body, this aspect won't change easily, right? Of course, the most important thing is, Taoist priest Yu, can you put down the feather duster in your hand? Yu Yueqing smiled awkwardly. She didn't expect the feather duster in her hand to betray her. She had the habit of shaking off the dust when she was thinking about things. This was also an occupational disease that she had developed over the years as a Taoist. However, in order to not expose her identity as the Lamia, she had to endure these days. But now that the trajectory of the script was completely messed up, she could finally release her nature. However, he couldn't find a suitable flying duster for the time being, so he could only use the feather duster he found in the restaurant as a replacement. It was this habitual movement that Lotus Sun sensed something was off. Then, Wang Ying quickly summarized the current situation to Lu Qingyi and Yu Yueqing telepathically. At this point, everyone fell into deep thought again. Getting down to business, the East Great Emperor sighed. I didn't expect things to turn out like this. According to the previous script, King Tianquan shouldn't have been killed by me. There's clearly a third party involved. Lu Qingyi analyzed and looked at the East Great Emperor. And I think that if Senior really isn't hiding anything from us, there's only one possibility left. Now that things have come to this Emperor indeed has nothing to hide. Senior Wang is in my body, and he witnesses everything. This Emperor is counting on Senior Wang to show off for me at the Four Emperors Assembly. Who would have thought something like this would happen? The East Great Emperor was very anxious, and didn't seem to be hiding anything at all. Then it's actually very obvious that there's a third party who also knows about this diary. Furthermore, they intend to deliberately destroy the trajectory of the diary to achieve their own ulterior motives. At that moment, Lu Qingyi stared straight at the East Great Emperor. Senior, I'll ask you again. Are you sure you're not lying? Do you really not know anything about this mysterious Senior one? The East Great Emperor felt a little awkward when he looked at Lu Qingyi like this. She was clearly a girl with a much lower realm than him, but for some reason, the East Great Emperor felt like he was shorter than Lu Qingyi. This was a powerful interrogation technique with the gaze, and Wang Zhen had the most right to speak about it. Ever since Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi got together, Lu Qingyi had been particularly strict with Wang Zhen's interactions with other members of the opposite sex, and would often use this kind of gaze to interrogate him. Thus, it was useless to lie under Lu Qingyi's gaze. Lu Qingyi would keenly pick up on the slightest hint of something amiss. Thus, after Lu Qingyi stared into the East Great Emperor's eyes for a few minutes, she suddenly withdrew her gaze and rubbed her chin doubtfully. From what I can see, the East Great Emperor isn't lying. He really doesn't know anything about the unexpected situation that's happening, or about this mysterious senior one. So first of all, we have to figure out what this third party is planning by disrupting the diary's original trajectory. At that moment, Wang Ying's voice sounded. Borrowing the East Great Emperor's body, he snapped his fingers, and a circle of light suddenly appeared in the air in front of him. Inside the circle was the scene of Zhang Zidon talking to Madame Shanxiu and the others in another room. At that moment, Zhang Zidon and Madame Shanxiu were testing each other out, and they happened to ask about the key topic of the Book of Nine Realms. Madame said that as a reward for my master, she would reveal a secret about the Book of Nine Realms. Zhang Zidon asked. Madame said that as a reward for my master, she would reveal a secret about the Book of Nine Realms. This Madame's words naturally count. Yes, Madame. Madame Shanxiu smiled amiably, and then gave Sun Fu a look. Fu, take it out. Yes, Madame. Sun Fu nodded obediently, and then took out a familiar scroll from a storage ring. This is... Zhang Zidon and the others in the other room were instantly stunned. It's as you can see. Madame Shanxiu narrowed her eyes and said mysteriously, this is the other Book of Nine Realms. It's indeed an authentic copy from Dao ancestor Wang. Then the one we got. It's also authentic, Madame Shanxiu said. There were originally 2 books of 9 realms. One was the Yang Scroll, and the other was the Yin Scroll. Chapter 1880. There were actually 2 books of 9 realms in this cultivation world at the same time. Whether it was Zhang Zipei, who was watching from the front, or Wang Ling and the others who were watching from the next room, they were all slightly stunned. Dao ancestor Wang designed 2 books at the beginning? Zhang Zipei asked. There was indeed only 1 book at the beginning. Madame Shanxiu frowned and said, do you remember the Life and All Things bowl that was sold at the beginning of the auction? It's a chaos magic treasure that can replicate any object. So it's that bowl. No, that bowl isn't that strong. It's one thing to replicate elixirs and talismans, but how can it replicate the Book of Nine Realms as well? Zhang Zipei was puzzled. It's a magic treasure that has the same function as that bowl. As far as I know, this magic treasure should be an object from the Outer God Palace, and has something to do with the old world. Her words once again stunned everyone present. Perhaps not many modern cultivators knew or came into contact with the matters of the old world, but among the ancient cultivators, this was a common topic. Humans were creatures full of curiosity. They would never stop exploring and tracing back to past civilizations. It was a never-ending cycle. In the heyday of the old world, the rulers of the old world led by the outer gods would certainly trace the origin of the universe. Although they were a magnificent race in the history of the universe, Wang Ling was certain that they absolutely weren't the origin of the universe. In the vast universe, there were all kinds of mysterious species. The old world, the world of the dragon clan, and the world of cultivators created by humans were nothing more than a drop in the ocean of the vast universe. Madam, is the Book of Nine Realms the Yin Scroll or the Yang Scroll? Zhang Zipei was a little stupefied as he opened his eyes and asked. It's the Yin Scroll, Madame Shanxiu said. If you sense it carefully with your spiritual senses, you should be able to sense that it's surrounded by some extraordinary energy that doesn't belong to cultivators. But I still don't understand why that person attacked King Tianquan. Zhang Zipei frowned. Because the Yin Scroll of the Book of Nine Realms originally belonged to King Tianquan. Also, King Tianquan entrusted that master thief called Zhang Zipei to give it to me. What's wrong, brother? Why are you so surprised? Zhang Zizi wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and tried to regain his composure. At the same time, he began to recall the events that had happened a long time ago. He vaguely seemed to remember this matter, but if Madame Shanxiu did not mention it at this moment, he was afraid that he would never remember it in his lifetime. Do you still remember when Zhang Zi stole the mixed immortal stone in front of everyone at the auction? That was when King Tianquan's commission began. Madame Shanxiu said. Therefore the Chaos Immortal Stone is just a bait. King Tianquan had planned to hand it over from the start, as it was a reward for Zhang Zidua. And their real purpose is to transfer the volume of the Book of the Nine Realms to me. At this point, the surrounding people were all stunned. No one would have thought that the truth would be like this on the surface. King Tianquan had attended the auction in such a dignified manner, guarded the Chaos Immortal Stone, and threatened to capture Zhang Zipei. All of this had been done in order to move the Book of Nine Realms out. At this moment, Chen Ren could not help but speak up. So, King Tianquan's real purpose is to ask Madame to protect the volume of the Book of the Nine Realms. And he also knows that he has been targeted from the beginning. Madame Shanxiu seemed a little surprised by Chen Ren's accurate guess. After a moment of daze, she nodded. Brother Chen Ren is right. But why did he fight with the gentleman in room 1 for the Yang volume at the auction? Sun Fu asked. Because under normal circumstances, it is impossible for a copied item to surpass the original. But because this volume is enhanced by the power of the Great Old World, it is surrounded by a mysterious force. This way, the situation is different from what we imagined. Madame Shanxiu explained in detail. Compared to the Yang volume, the volume has a more terrifying power. Not only can you inherit Dao Ancestor Wang's legacy, but you can also obtain the power of the Great Old World. According to what this old woman knows, this copy of the scroll has no restrictions. No matter who opens it, they can see the words inside. Could this be the Great Old World's recovery plan? Zhang Zi made a bold guess. That's right. This recovery plan is very dangerous. King Tianquan clearly guessed this, which is why he started to set it up. Madame Shanxiu said. In the end, this scroll is only a copy. As long as King Tianquan can successfully obtain the Yang scroll, he can offset part of the scroll's power, and then gather his strength to destroy it. Unfortunately, he didn't bid for your master. So he had no choice but to change his plan and forcibly seize the Yang volume. He did not expect to be ambushed by a third party in the process. So his death has nothing to do with my master? It's not completely unrelated. But this matter cannot be blamed on you. After all, it looks like King Tianquan intends to digest this matter on his own. I came to this conclusion based on some of the clues and evidence I currently have. Madame Shanxiu sighed and said, Don't you find it strange that King Tianquan didn't leave anything behind the moment he turned into ashes? It is indeed very strange. Zhang Zi nodded. A normal cultivator's death wouldn't have been so clean. King Tianquan evaporated in an instant and disappeared without a trace. This method is very heaven-defying. Because the moment the third party got rid of him, they also took away all his storage magic treasures. From the very beginning, they were after the volume of the Book of Nine Realms. After listening to the entire inference, everyone couldn't help but have mixed feelings in their hearts. Although Madame Shanxiu had only come to this conclusion based on the clues they currently had, with her status in the cultivation world, the credibility of her words was very high. This was a very reasonable conclusion, and also explained a lot of things that he hadn't been able to figure out before. So the question now was, who on earth was this third party? In fact, at that moment he vaguely had the answer in his heart. Madam, since you've said so much, you should know a little about this third party, right? Zhang Zi asked solemnly at that moment. It's just a guess, I can't be sure. Madame Shanxiu shook her head slightly and said, This person's power is spread throughout the Central Territory and the 4 major territories. He's a new force that has flourished in the last 100 years, and has made a lot of money from the war between the Eastern and Western territories. He has a very solid foundation. Could it be? Zhang Zi suddenly thought of something. Yes, this force's surname is Peng. The error-free chapters of the daily life of the immortal king will continue to be updated on the new C-Book Pavilion. There are no advertisements on the site, so please bookmark and recommend the new C-Book Pavilion. If you like the daily life of the immortal king, please bookmark. The daily life of the immortal king is updated the fastest in the C-Book Pavilion. Chapter 1881. It could be said that Madame Shanxiu's words explained a lot of things that he hadn't been able to understand before. For example, given Dao ancestor Wang's prestigious status in the cultivation world, why had he chosen a rebellious person like Peng Shiren as his disciple? After all, talent wasn't the only thing that mattered when it came to choosing a disciple. Morality and character were equally important. Looking at it all now, Peng Shiren was nothing more than a usurper who claimed to be Dao ancestor Wang's disciple. Because of Wang Ling's promise, Dao ancestor Wang had no choice but to accept him and pass on his legacy to him. I didn't expect things to turn out like this. Even Yi's great emperor was surprised when he heard this. It wasn't that the four emperors hadn't paid attention to the Peng family, which had risen to prominence in the last 100 years, but they hadn't expected them to actually have such an idea. Seniors, I suddenly thought of a possibility, Lotus Sun suddenly said at that moment, her expression extremely solemn. Miss Sun, please speak. Yi's great emperor nodded, and looked like he was all ears. I'm thinking, what if King Tiankuan's death and Peng Shiren's subsequent fight for the Book of Nine Realms are actually part of the historical trajectory? It had to be said that Lotus Sun's very bold idea shocked everyone present, and they looked at each other in dismay. Yi's great emperor asked, are you saying that it's still part of the historical trajectory? Lotus Sun nodded obediently, then analyzed the situation unhurriedly. I think that the progress of the diary, including Yi's great emperors, is actually the first time we've experienced it. Although it says what will happen later, it's true that things haven't developed according to what's written in the diary, and it seems like we've already deviated from the historical trajectory. But if all of this was planned by the senior who wrote the diary, that's a different story. Since that senior has the ability to write this diary that transcends timelines, then he definitely has the power to influence the development of the timeline. If he has already calculated King Tiankuan's death, then he will definitely be able to control the trajectory of events. If he has already calculated King Tiankuan's death and Peng Shiren's obtaining of the Book of Nine Realms, then everything else actually makes sense. As for what I said above, there's actually evidence to back it up. After all, Peng Shiren did indeed inherit Dao ancestor Wang's legacy in the modern cultivation society. This legacy is very pure, and clearly wasn't given to him by the Yin scroll of the Book of Nine Realms. Everyone was stunned by her words. Wang Zhen thought it over carefully, and felt that there was some truth to her words. Actually, Rongrong's words are quite logical. Also, why do I feel that rather than saying that the person who was clearly arranged is the dead King Tiankuan, it's better to say that it's this Peng Shiren? Lu Qingyi quickly nodded in agreement with Wang Zhen's opinion. That makes sense. After all, in the timeline of the modern cultivation society, even if Peng Shiren inherited Dao ancestor Wang's orthodoxy, he would still be beaten up by Senior Wang, wouldn't he? That is to say, this orthodoxy was probably inherited by him on purpose in our timeline. Wang Ling and Wang Ying. So that was how it was. At that moment, Wang Ling couldn't help thinking that Lotus Sun was a genius. He had only wanted to find the mastermind behind the mysterious text, but he had neglected this layer of logical connection. That was right. This Peng Shiren had already inherited his orthodoxy in the modern cultivation society. Even if he had inherited Dao ancestor Wang's orthodoxy, it wasn't as strong as Wang Ling had imagined. Orthodoxy was a good thing. It could greatly increase a cultivator's cultivation in a short period of time, which was the equivalent of a grandmaster giving a meal to eat. But orthodoxy also had its limits. Because if Peng Shiren had talent that surpassed Dao ancestor Wang's, inheriting Dao ancestor Wang's orthodoxy would instead be a shackle for him. And this point was actually proven right now. Because Peng Shiren wasn't interested in the orthodox Book of Nine Realms, he was instead more interested in the Yin scroll replica. After all, the Yin scroll contained the power of the old world, which could double his strength and give him infinite possibilities. After analyzing the situation at this point, it seemed that the current situation was already infinitely clear. Faced with a script that had completely deviated from the diary's trajectory, Wang Ling finally knew how to put a full stop to this plot from the eternal world. It looks like we still have to wait for the 4 emperors' assembly tomorrow. At that moment, Wang Ying looked around and said, "It's impossible that Great West Emperor doesn't know about King Tianquan's death. Under normal circumstances, given the conflict between Great West Emperor and Great East Emperor, he would have already come looking for revenge. But Great West Emperor hasn't done anything yet. This can only mean one thing, and that is that Great West Emperor has also thought of this, which is why he hasn't made a move. In that case, the force that Peng Shiren belongs to will still make a move," said Yu Yueqing. She did her best to straighten her posture and control her snake body, although moving was no different from walking on 2 legs in a normal situation. This abrupt feeling was still present. This Peng Shiren doesn't know that King Tianquan has already transferred the Yin scroll, and that it's in Madame Shan Xiu's hands. So the most likely scenario now is that he'll directly snatch the Yang scroll. Then he'll use a magic treasure or secret art from the old world to replicate the Yin scroll. Taoist Yu is absolutely right. At that moment, Wang Ying's eyes met Yu Yueqing's. This Taoist priest was young, but extremely quick-witted. On the other side, Zhang Zipei had also come over with the Yin scroll that Madame Shanxiu had given him. Madame Shanxiu was a woman of her word. Not only did she explain the whole story, she also directly offered the Yin scroll to Wang Ying. She wasn't stupid. In her hands, this thing was no different from an invisible time bomb. Furthermore, as an orthodox cultivator, she had no intention of opening it at all. No cultivator in their right mind would want the terrifying civilization of the old world to revive in the eternal cultivation world. That dark and twisted history should remain as history forever, sealed in the long river of time. What should we do? What should we do with this thing? Zhang Zipei took the initiative to hand over the Yin scroll. Wang Ling accepted the Dao Yin scroll, but he had no intention of opening it. Although he was curious about the old world, he was now well aware that he was making a decision on behalf of future cultivators. Thus he didn't think too much about it. A dazzling black and white flame immediately rose in his hand, and with a bang, the Yin scroll was directly burned to ashes. East Great Emperor's Adam's apple couldn't help bobbing up and down. He never thought that the Yin scroll of the Book of 9 Realms would actually be burned so easily. What kind of method was this? In the last few days, the methods that this senior hiding in his body had repeatedly displayed had already surpassed East Great Emperor's own understanding. Especially when he had just heard people say that Peng Shiren, who had inherited Dao ancestor Wang's legacy, had been beaten up by this senior Wang in the modern cultivation world. East Great Emperor's heart was filled with mixed feelings. What kind of person was Dao ancestor Wang? This was the legend and pearl of the eternal cultivation world. This group of people actually didn't revere such a person at all. This was too scary. Even East Great Emperor himself began to have faint doubts. Was the first founder of cultivation Dao ancestor Wang or not? Chapter 1882. At the entrance of Spring Orchid Restaurant, Madame Shan Xiu left with Mei Yunhai, Sun Fu, Chen Ren, and Guijia. Sun Fu successfully received the recommendation letter from Mr. Room 1 to the East Emperor's Imperial Palace. She was very pleased. Originally, the East Emperor only promised to keep Sun Fu by his side temporarily. It was just a vague evasive move. He wanted to wait for the right time to reject Sun Fu. But now, Madame Shan Xiu had fulfilled her promise regarding the Book of 9 Realms. It could be said that she had made a great contribution. He felt that if he still did not agree to Sun Fu's request, it would be unreasonable. Therefore, he immediately asked Zhang Zi to draft a recommendation letter using Li Ren's notes, and stamped it with the royal seal that was prepared in advance. He then sent the entire letter to Sun Fu. Sure enough, after receiving the recommendation letter, Sun Fu was overjoyed. Oh my god, this is the 9-star royal seal. This person is really a big shot. His status is noble. With this recommendation letter, there's a 100% chance that you'll be able to cultivate in the East Region Imperial Palace. The few of them stared at the seal on the recommendation letter with their eyes wide open. The royal family was a noble member of any domain, but there were actually different ranks among the members of the royal family. Under normal circumstances, a royal family with a 9-star royal seal could only mean one thing. That was that this royal family had a direct bloodline connection with the emperor in the East Emperor Palace. Therefore, their status was far more noble than ordinary royal families. Thank you, madam. If it wasn't for you, I think this matter most likely wouldn't have happened. Sun Fu smiled brightly, like a dazzling summer flower. Sister Fu, do you really want to enter the East Emperor Palace? Is there something there that attracts you? Madam has the best relationship with the South Emperor Palace. If you entered the South Emperor Palace, Madam wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. Guojie asked. I can only say that this is a kind of fate. I always feel that I am fated with the East Emperor Palace, and I seem to have met this Mr. Room one somewhere before. Sun Fu said. You will have a chance to meet again. Madame Shanxiu smiled. We? Sun Fu was stunned. Yes, you guys. Madame Shanxiu maintained her benevolent smile. She swept her gaze over Sun Fu, Chen Ren, and Guojie with a meaningful look in her eyes. On the other side, after sorting out his basic thoughts, Wang Ling already had a clear idea of what to do next. If he was right, Peng Shiren would definitely continue to make a move on the Yang scroll in his hands. In this situation, all he needed to do was wait for the heir to come to him, but he felt that he couldn't wait that long. He had to find Peng Shiren and then resolve this ill-fated relationship from ancient times. However, with the vastness of the eternal world and the number of galaxies, it was like looking for a needle in a haystack to find a person in the vast number of planets. He had no choice but to require the help of others. Fortunately, Wang Ling had already contacted quite a few partners. As long as everyone worked together, it wouldn't be difficult to find Peng Shiren no matter how vast the universe was. With the help of the other great emperors, it'll be easier to find this Peng Shiren if we combine the strength of the 4 emperors to lay an inescapable net. East Great Emperor said through the voice chat spell. But the 4 emperors' assembly hasn't started yet. How do we contact the other great emperors? Zhang Zi asked secretly. There was a way to contact the other great emperors, but it wasn't direct. They still needed to wait for their responses, and any delay might cause problems. Thus, East Great Emperor thought that it was best to have someone who could act as a medium to pass on information at this time. Furthermore, this person had to be very clear about the positions of the 4 great emperors. The first person East Great Emperor thought of in the eternal world was Lu Mukin, the president of the Central Auction House. Senior Wang, didn't you say before that Lu Runwan, the son of the president of the Central Auction House, is also one of you? East Great Emperor suddenly asked at that moment. That's right. He also transmigrated from modern cultivation society to the eternal world. Wang Ying nodded. If this senior can use his identity as the son of the president of the Central Auction House, Lu Runwan, to invite his father Lu Mukin out of retirement, this Lu Mukin should be a medium to pass on information about us 4 emperors, and he might have the means to find a place for us to meet before the 4 emperors' assembly, East Great Emperor said. He knows about you 4 emperors? Who on earth is he? Wang Ying was very curious. I heard that this Lu Mukin used to be Dao Ancestor Wang's personal guard. No wonder he has this kind of ability. Wang Ying sighed. He felt that all this could be considered an arrangement. Fortunately, the person who had transmigrated into Lu Renwan's body was Qinzong, so as long as Wang Ling sent a telepathic message to Qinzong from afar to ask him to do this, it shouldn't be difficult to invite Lu Mukin out of retirement. In fact, Lu Mukin and Qinzong arrived a little faster than he had imagined. He had only sent the message to Qinzong less than a quarter of an hour ago. 2 tightly wrapped black-robed figures appeared at the entrance of the Spring Orchid Brothel. One of them was Qinzong, who had transmigrated into Lu Renwan's body. Everyone was very surprised that this matter had been settled so quickly. Senior Qin settled it so quickly? Lotus Sun glanced at Qinzong, who had taken off his hood, and then saw the person standing next to him also take off his hood. This was a middle-aged man with a well-proportioned build and a mustache. At first glance, Lotus Sun's impression of him was that he was naturally dignified and gave off a faint sense of dignity. This person was none other than Lu Mukin himself. Considering that Lu Mukin had previously been Dao ancestor Wang's personal guard, it wasn't too surprising that he had this kind of aura. But very quickly, Lotus Sun realized that this Lu Mukin was gradually losing his composure. He first looked at Lotus Sun and said, "Mistress." Lotus Sun immediately returned a startled look. You are." Then that dignified face started to twist, and the moment he saw East Great Emperor, he dropped to one knee on the ground on the spot and threw himself at Wang Ling with tears in his eyes. "Shifu, oh Shifu. Disciple missed you so much. What would disciple do without you?" Wang Ling. In fact, even Wang Ling himself never thought that Audiobook would actually transmigrate into the body of Lu Mukin, the president of the Central Auction House. This world was really too small. At that moment, Wang Ling sighed endlessly in his heart. Chapter 1883. As Audiobook threw a tantrum, Wang Ling couldn't help feeling a little absent-minded. In that instant, he suddenly felt that the world was really too small. Of course, all of this was an inexorable arrangement and coincidence, and it could also be said to be a kind of luck. Although he hadn't cast the great luck spell on himself, Qinzong was the only koi he had chosen in the cultivation world. With this koi, their luck naturally wouldn't be too bad. Lu Mukin, the president of the Central Auction House, was the only person who controlled the intelligence network of the 4 territories. Throughout the ages, no one had been able to replace Lu Mukin as the perfect middleman. It was just that for Wang Ling, whether or not Audiobook could play the role of Lu Mukin well was still a question. In short, the real Lu Mukin would never do something like cry for his parents and throw himself at anyone he saw. He was actually rubbing his head against Wang Ling's chest. What a scandal! Wang Ling calmly pushed Audiobook's head away and sighed in his heart, feeling that Audiobook didn't have the slightest sensitivity. If Ryoko Kamiya saw this, she would definitely be jealous. "That's not right. How do you know this?" Just then Wang Ying suddenly asked Wang Ling telepathically. As Wang Ling's shadow, he and Wang Ling were telepathically connected, so he noticed a blind spot in Wang Ling's thoughts. Wang Ying found it inconceivable that an unromantic teenager who always had a poker face would actually know how to be jealous. Wang Ling felt that Wang Ying was making a mountain out of a molehill when he asked this question. Of course, he hadn't experienced the various emotions that a normal person should have, and naturally didn't know what jealousy felt like. But it wasn't that he didn't completely understand what jealousy meant. To be exact, Wang Ling knew the literal state of every emotion. In Wang Ling's dictionary, jealousy was categorized as a special possessiveness. For example, this was the reaction you would have when you saw something or someone you liked getting closer to someone else. In this regard, Wang Ling deliberately gave Wang Ying an example patiently. For example, when he sometimes saw other people eating limited edition crispy noodle snacks that he couldn't buy, he would often have this feeling. This is jealousy. This is definitely jealousy. Wang Ying dropped his forehead into his hand. He felt that Wang Ling's understanding of jealousy seemed to have a strange deviation. But obviously, this wasn't the time to discuss this. Right now, their biggest mission was to gather the 4 emperors and hold a secret meeting ahead of time. Then, they would set up a trap to lure Peng Shiren out. As the core of this plan, Audiobook would play a crucial role in the subsequent plot. "Don't worry, Master. I have confidence in this matter. Elder, you don't need to move. I'll use Lu Mukin's method to call the other imperial capitals here in Chunlan building," Audiobook promised solemnly. Everyone knew that in the immemorial cultivation world, other than Dao ancestor Wang, the people with the highest status were the 4 emperors who controlled the 4 domains. Under normal circumstances, it was extremely difficult for a normal cultivator to meet the great emperor. As for making the 4 emperors instantly gather at a specific location, it was even more impossible in the eyes of ordinary people. However, Lu Mukin had this special charisma. Even Zhang Zizi was very curious. Even if Lu Mukin was once Dao ancestor Wang's guard, does he really have the face to invite other great emperors? There must be some other reason behind this. Do you have something on them to threaten them? Threaten? How is that possible? In any case, this Lu Mukin used to be Dao ancestor Wang's guard. How could he do such a despicable thing? Furthermore, The targets of this threat are the great emperors. Although this Lu Mukin is strong, it won't be easy to offend 4 great emperors at the same time, right? Ajwa said. After listening in, Zhang Zizi frowned and nodded. That's true. But now everyone was even more curious as to what method Lu Mukin would use to call the other 3 great emperors here. In the end, Ajwa just took out a storage bag from Lu Mukin's body. Actually, he hadn't been idle in the past few days when he hadn't met up with Wang Ling. He had been studying his identity through the memories Lu Mukin had passed on to him, putting himself in the role and waiting for an opportunity to act. He knew that he would definitely meet up with Wang Ling, so he had already familiarized himself with everything early on. To everyone's surprise, the thing that Ajwa took out from Lu Mukin's personal storage bag was very simple. It was a crystal communication ball that couldn't be any more ordinary, and was a relatively advanced communication device in the immemorial cultivation world. Unlike ordinary communication talismans, not only could it hold more spirit energy imprints corresponding to different cultivators, it could also establish a huge network of contacts. The most important thing was that it could directly make a face-to-face video call and project images into the air. You're so close that you can directly use a communication ball to summon someone? East Great Emperor was stupefied and shocked. Although he also had Lu Mukin's communication ball, as one of the 4 great emperors, he knew that summoning a great emperor-level figure to a designated location, even if it was Lu Mukin, the process wouldn't be that convenient. But now Lu Mukin had actually directly called to summon someone. Had his relationship with the other 3 great emperors already reached this level? At that moment, East Great Emperor started to feel a sense of crisis. Don't be nervous, it's not as outrageous as you think. Ajwa gave a mysterious smile. Then he used the communication crystal ball to directly contact West Great Emperor. Little Shi, you can come over now. That's right, that Chunlan house on the central trade planet, it's next to the temple. Little Shi. Everyone was startled by this familiar form of address. Was the person calling Little Shi really an emperor? And not an underling? Why did it feel like déjà vu of a mafia boss ordering his underling around? For all. East Great Emperor had a mental breakdown. He never expected the relationship between West Great Emperor and Lu Mukin to be this good. Directly calling him Little Shi was outrageous. But just as he was about to vomit blood, West Great Emperor's voice came through the communication crystal ball. That are you sure? King Tianquan is dead, and I'm still dealing with the chaos here. The court officials have reported to me to directly send troops to attack the Eastern Territory, but I'm still playing Tai Chi with them. Don't pay attention to them. Find an excuse to get away and come directly here. My Shifu, Master's wife, Senior Zhang Zijin, Brother Wang Zhen, Miss Lu Qingyi, Daoist Yu Yueqing and Brother Qinzong are all here, Ajwa said. After saying this, everyone finally understood and understood a little. Lotus Sun instantly understood, and an enlightened expression appeared on her face. Senior Zhua, could it be that this great West Emperor is also? At that moment, Ajwa smiled. That's right. This West Great Emperor is actually Senior Li Xian, Brother Qinzong, and I didn't do anything else in the past few days in the eternal world except make calls through this communication crystal ball. In the end, we didn't expect each call to be accurate. Hearing this, everyone was even more shocked. Lotus Sun. Then the other 2 emperors. Master's wife, you're right. The other 2 emperors are also our people. North Emperor is Brother Xiang Yi, and the only female emperor, South Emperor, is Senior Golden Lamp. Senior Golden Lamp. Don't worry, they're all very good at acting. After all, Senior Golden Lamp had the experience of being a woman in several reincarnations. He's more than enough to play an empress. That is to say, apart from Brother Gu Xuanji, we've found everyone else who has transmigrated to the eternal world. No, they're stilling. Inger isn't with me. Oh, I see. Don't worry, Master's wife, I haven't finished calling my contacts yet. Later, I'll have Senior Qinzong stand on the side and call a few more. Chapter 1884. Wang Ying also knew that Sun Yinger had disappeared. Although he didn't show it on the surface, he had already secretly activated Shadow Dao's sensing ability to sense her many times. But for some reason, after coming to this eternal world, the connection between him and Sun Ying'er had been completely cut off, and there was no sign of any connection at all. Wang Ying was sure that this wasn't a problem with Shadow Dao. After all, the connection between him and Wang Ling was still there, which meant that Shadow Dao was operating normally. But why couldn't he sense Sun Ying'er? Wang Ying felt that there might be some other reason behind this. Fortunately, the good news was that of the 4 emperors who currently controlled the eternal world, East Emperor was jointly controlled by Wang Ling and Wang Ling, while the other 3 emperors were on his side. In addition, Ajwa was playing the role of Lu Mukin, who controlled the strongest intelligence network in the eternal world. As long as they worked together, it wouldn't be difficult to find a specific person, even if it was like looking for a needle in a haystack. They just needed to use their respective forces to send out the appropriate signal across the universe. Of course, the most important prerequisite for this was that Sun Ying'er had to respond to him. For example, Wang Ling had used a hint at the auction house earlier to get in touch with Qinzong, Lu Qingyi and Yu Yueqing. While waiting for the rest of his partners to arrive at Chunlan building, Wang Ying clearly felt uneasy. President Ying, are you worried about Ying'er? Lotus Sun was happy to see this. She thought this would be a very good demonstration, especially for Wang Ling, and would be of great reference value. But while the demonstration was a classic, so was the tsundere. Wang Ying snorted and crossed his arms with East Emperor's body as he said coldly, "Heh, who's worried about her?" It wasn't easy for her to hide in this eternal world. Now that she doesn't have to be under my control, I'm afraid she can't wait to be happy. Although Wang Ying's tsundere wasn't as exaggerated as Ryoko Kamiya's, he had his own unique side. Lotus Sun thought that this might be the legendary contrasting cuteness. After all, Wang Ying indeed didn't have the word cute in him. President Ying, it's not good to lie. Don't you want to find Ying? Or? Heh, it's best if I can't find her. Otherwise, I'll have to find her every night and make her back hurt. When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but gasp. Those who didn't know the truth felt that this sentence seemed to contain a lot of information. The master hadn't even started yet, but the shadows were progressing at a godly speed. They were already so lovey-dovey. This. What a scandal. Perhaps CEO Ying is right. Without Ying'er around, you really don't have to worry. But apart from Ying', I'm afraid no one can withstand your planetary blockbuster spell, Lotus Sun said again. This time, she chose to retreat in order to advance. Wang Ying was as stubborn as ever, refusing to admit that he wanted to find Sun Ying'er. Even if I, Wang Ying, am scolded to death, I will die outside. He would never think about anything related to this fellow. She's the master of the void. Why should I worry? What a joke. The short conversation between the two echoed in the space, and no one could interrupt. The rest of the people just watched silently. From beginning to end, Lotus Sun's gaze never stopped on the East Great Emperor, causing his hair to stand on end. But the person she really cared about wasn't East Great Emperor, but Wang Ling. She really wanted to know how much Wang Ling had comprehended from it. There's always a way. At that moment, Wang Zhen said weakly to comfort everyone, and I think that it doesn't matter even if we don't find her. As long as we finish this plot, it means that our mission is over. Once it's over, everyone who transmigrated from the modern era to eternity will be able to go back together, right? In theory that's true, but there's always the what if, Ajwa said. Ajwa said, in short, it's naturally the best if we can find everyone. Brother Wangzhen, don't worry too much. Don't worry, before the script is over, you definitely won't have a child. After all, you haven't been pregnant for long, and you haven't taken any elixirs to accelerate your pregnancy, so there shouldn't be any problems. Wang Zhen immediately blushed at Ajwa's words. Let me be clear, I'm not doing this for myself. I know we all understand. Ajwa stretched out his hand and patted him on the shoulder. If it were me, I would also panic. So when it comes to this, we have to learn from Senior Golden Lamp. Why? Do you think Senior Golden Lamp never experienced childbirth when he chose to be a woman in his countless reincarnations? Following Ajwa's nonsense, the scene fell deathly silent. On the other side, Sun Ying'er was also in despair. How could she not want to get in touch with the main force as soon as possible? But there was nothing Sun Yinger could do now. She screamed and roared in her heart thousands of times, hoping that someone here would discover her existence sooner. But what made Sun Yinger even more desperate was that she couldn't make a sound in her current state. Most importantly, the binding between them had failed, and Wang Ying couldn't use Shadow Dao to sense her existence. This idiot! How could such a cunning and quick-witted person like him not discover her existence? She had thought that after being tortured by Wang Ying's planet drumming spell countless times, the two of them should have a very good rapport with each other. Who would have thought that it would actually fail at this critical moment? Sun Yinger's heart was filled with sorrow. Of course, after thinking about it carefully, she felt that she couldn't completely blame Wang Ying for not being able to discover her. After all, no one would have thought that she was so far away, yet right in front of their eyes. That was right. After coming to Immemorial, the character she had transmigrated into was the child in the belly of the Holy Stone Church's Holy Virgin, played by Wang Zhen. At first, Sun Yinger hadn't realized this, and thought that she had just been trapped by some array. But Lu Qingyi's slap on Wang Zhen after she saw him had directly jolted her awake. So at that moment, Sun Yinger's heart was on the verge of collapse. She was really too miserable. What a scam! Why did other people transmigrate into Immemorial and act as emperors? Goddess! A filthy rich second generation. At the very least, she was a maid at His Highness's side. She was just a baby who couldn't move a thing and had zero fighting strength. Sun Yinger realized that she really had a mental breakdown. The point was that she was really scared. If the plot was over and no one found her, would she return to the modern world with everyone? If she was unfortunately left alone in Immemorial, how would she go back? Chapter 1885. Perhaps even the boss of Chunlan Building himself didn't expect to receive such a big deal today, even though he had already gone out to enjoy himself after receiving the booking fee. East Great Emperor had directly given him enough money to rebuild Chunlan Building. Even if East Great Emperor demolished the place during the negotiations, the boss wouldn't complain at all. But Chunlan Building was essentially a place for male and female cultivators of the eternal world to have fun, and it was also the place where the most courtesans and grass bosses gathered in the entire Central Region's trading star system. And it was in this place of debauchery, filled with all kinds of dazzling illusions and extravagance, that a shocking secret meeting of the four emperors was about to take place, which was something that most cultivators throughout the ages would never have imagined. Because of the gathering of the four emperors, the other three emperors weren't far from the central trade star. Following Ajua's signal to assemble, three cloaked men quickly arrived at Spring Orchid Building, wrapped tightly in cloaks. Wang Ling didn't even need to sense them to know that they were the remaining three emperors. Even if their figures were hidden extremely well by their cloaks, he could still sense that they were extraordinary from their imposing auras. In the communication crystal ball earlier, Ajua had already hinted that they needed to help Wang Ling hide his identity, so when the three of them came up, they respectfully lined up in front of East Great Emperor. After putting on a good show, they respectfully and humbly bowed in unison. This humble monk is Jin Deng, Xiangyi, Li Xian. Greetings, Senior Wang. It had to be said that monk Jin Deng indeed looked very familiar with controlling this body of an empress. It didn't feel like a man at all, and instead embodied the charm of an empress to the fullest. The only thing that was out of place was that he still retained the habit of being a monk. As everyone knew, although monk Jin Deng had been a woman, he was overall still a decent monk. Reincarnation was nothing more than his daily work as a supreme Buddhist saint, and there was nothing to make a fuss about. It was just that East Great Emperor was now thinking about this name carefully, and it suddenly dawned on him. When he had heard Ajua call out Golden Lamp's name before, he had felt that it sounded very familiar. Now that monk Golden Lamp used the term "this poor monk" to introduce himself, East Great Emperor immediately came back to his senses. So it's you. After so many years, I didn't expect to see East Great Emperor's charm again after such a long time. This humble monk is very lucky. Monk Jin Deng performed a Buddhist salute in the Empress's body, and then sat down cross-legged. Jin Deng, I didn't expect it to really be you. I thought it was just a coincidence. East Great Emperor was shocked. Who would have thought that this Jin Dang was actually the monk Jin Dang? Not only had this monk lived into the modern cultivation world, not only that, Jin Great Emperor, but he was also one of the best. For a moment, the Great East Emperor had mixed feelings. Although Golden Lamp Monk's strength was not as heaven-defying as it was now, he was still one of the most talented players. He was once considered a strong competitor for the throne of the Great Emperor. With everyone assembled, Wang Ying scanned the area in front of him and nodded in satisfaction. He then began to convey Wang Ling's message on his behalf. I believe that everyone is clear about what to do next. The situation is urgent. What we need to do now is to put this section of history back on the right track. Understood. The other three emperors nodded at the same time. They were all old acquaintances in their bodies, so there was no problem communicating at all. Lastly, about the reward for the successful completion of this mission. At that moment Wang Ying spoke. In theory, most of the people here were now members of Battle Sect. Although Xiang Yi and Qin Zong were temporary guest officials and elders, they were in fact still part of the official establishment. Generally speaking, Battle Sect would assign a difficulty rating based on the mission, with the lowest being D, followed by C, B, A, S, SS, and the highest being SSS. Battle Sect would then organize teams based on the difficulty of the mission, and finally give a score of 10 points based on the completion of the mission, as well as the performance of all the mission executors during the execution of the mission. During the mission, if the score was less than 6, it meant that you didn't have an outstanding overall performance, and you would only get a portion of the mission points, which would be accumulated and exchanged for corresponding items in Battle Sect's treasury. Scores above 6 were completely different. Furthermore, if the difficulty of the mission was high, the reward would also be very amazing. Wang Ling wasn't a stingy person, although he knew very well that as long as he said the word, everyone would do their best. But sometimes, a proper reward was still necessary. This is a temporary mission, and the difficulty of this mission is the highest since the founding of our sect, SSS. All core members of Battle Sect with a score of 6 and above can choose a magic treasure of their choice from the King's Treasure Pants. Wang Ying said straightforwardly as he conveyed Wang Ling's meaning. Everyone's eyes instantly lit up. Wang Ling didn't think much of the things in Wang Jibao's pants, but for everyone here, every item inside was a treasure that people would scramble to get their hands on. Of course, it was usually Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and the elders of Battle Sect who would hold a meeting to discuss and decide how to grade disciples for sect missions. Occasionally, some sect disciples would deliberately curry favor with some elders to cover up their poor performance in missions, which would make things a little unfair. This was in fact a very serious violation of the rules, and if it was found out, there would be very severe punishments. If it was more severe, they might be directly expelled from Battle Sect. But with Wang Ling supervising the entire operation this time, there was absolutely no objection to this mission. Ling Zhenren personally grading the mission was absolutely fair and just. So the problem now was how they could set up a trap to lure Peng Shiren out. Given Peng Shiren's cautious character, if East Great Emperor didn't reveal any flaws, he definitely wouldn't try to snatch the Book of 9 Realms. But if he deliberately revealed a flaw, it would be too obvious, which would instead make Peng Shiren suspicious. At that moment, the 4 emperors had gathered together in a secret meeting, and all the networks and intelligence networks of the entire world were gathered here. Very quickly Xiang Yi, who was playing the role of North Emperor, suddenly said, "That's right, there seems to be something like this in North Emperor's memories. I remember that the Peng family is looking for a son-in-law, and the person they're looking for is Peng Shiren's younger sister, Peng Basin, so I think it would be better." After thinking for a bit, Xiang Yi quickly stopped and shook his head. "No, forget it, I won't say it. This can only be considered a bad idea." "You can say it first. It's just a discussion, it's fine," Wang Ying said. Xiang Yi first looked at Lotus Sun, then said a little awkwardly, "What I mean is, since the original copy of the Book of 9 Realms is with Senior Wang, why don't we have him bring the original copy to propose marriage?" Hearing this, everyone was startled at first, and then many of them nodded their heads one after another. "Not bad, this idea doesn't seem too bad," said Li Xian, who was the West Great Emperor. This, how can we do that?" But at that moment, Lotus Sun suddenly stood up agitatedly, her face red. Absolutely not. It's too dangerous. His anxious look made everyone around him smile knowingly. Looking at Lotus Sun's expression, the corners of Ojwa's mouth rose wildly, and he simply couldn't stop himself. Then, mistress, what do you want to do? Quick-witted, Lotus Sun patted her chest and said, how about this? Give me the Book of 9 Realms. I'll dress up as a man and propose marriage. The error-free chapters of the daily life of the immortal king will continue to be updated in the popular bar. Everyone, please bookmark and recommend the popular bar. Those who like the daily life of the immortal king, please bookmark. The daily life of the immortal king's popular bar is the fastest to update. Chapter 1886. Under everyone's meaningful gazes, Lotus Sun's face grew redder and redder. To be honest, even she hadn't expected to come up with such a bold and constructive suggestion. In short, anyone could go and propose. East's great emperor wasn't allowed to go. Even if East's great emperor was using his own body, he still had Wang Ling and Wang Ying in it. Lotus Sun felt that this was a little strange. She thought that her actions could be regarded as righteous, and not just for her own selfish reasons, but also for Sun Yinger's sake. These two shadows had been lovey-dovey for so long, and were about to succeed. How could she ruin the critical juncture with something like this? That's right. Her suggestion now was generally for the sake of Sun Yinger and Wang Ying's happiness. It had nothing to do with her at all. No. Why do I get the feeling that you're a little anxious? Nonsense. Of course not. Lotus Sun's face grew hotter, and she looked around at the crowd. Am I anxious? Am I anxious? Do I look like I'm anxious? Lu Qingyi patted her on the shoulder and sighed. Don't say it, good disciple. It seems like you are a little. Yi Yueqing also nodded. A little anxious. Seeing everyone's meaningful gazes, Lotus Sun took several deep breaths and tried to regain her composure. Fine. Even if I'm a little anxious, this is also for the sake of history returning to the right path. This is for the greater good of all cultivators. It's very normal. As expected of Master's wife, we admire her for being able to uphold the greater good of cultivators in this situation. Hearing this, the corners of Ojwa's mouth curled up slightly. He couldn't bear to continue leading the crowd in teasing Lotus Sunday. In any case, everyone present was well aware of what her anxious action meant. The only one who didn't understand the situation was that expressionless man hiding in East's great emperor's body. After all, the Book of 9 Realms was a hot potato in the current situation. Even if it was in East's great emperor's hands, it might not be safe, let alone in Lotus Sun's hands. But on second thought, he felt that it might be easier to leave this matter to Lotus Sunday. In any case, the course of history was already a mess. It wouldn't matter even if Lotus Sun summoned the mysterious sea. If they really ran into an emergency, with the mysterious sea's protective sword body, Wang Ling didn't think that the Prung family would be a match for the Nine Corps' mysterious sea. Of course, the more important reason was that he thought girls would understand girls better, so it would be very abrupt for a few men to suddenly propose marriage. Lotus Sun's thoughts were a little more meticulous, which might make the whole thing seem even smoother. After deciding on the plan, Lotus Sun heaved a long sigh of relief. Lu Qingyi and Yi Yueqing helped to give Lotus Sun an exquisite makeover, mainly focusing on her skin tone and facial features, so that her originally delicate face now had a more masculine contour. He didn't make too many changes to his hairstyle. He just adjusted the length of his hair, so that it fell down naturally. Then he added some bangs on both sides of his forehead, instantly making him look like a handsome and elegant man. When everyone saw Lotus Sun come out of the room in a pure white man's suit, they couldn't take their eyes off her. Her foundation was excellent to begin with, and even though she had been dressed as a man, she was still stunning. Even East's great emperor was flabbergasted. Whether it was a man or a woman, such a face could be called an immortal. Even if the 4 great emperors' imperial palaces were full of handsome men and beautiful women, they wouldn't be able to find anyone who couldn't take their eyes off her at first glance. In fact, cross-dressing was the best way to tell whether a person was good or bad. It was true that beauty was in the bones, not the skin. It's feasible. I think it's totally feasible. bring the Book of 9 Realms, and the betrothal gift to propose marriage. I guarantee that Peng Basin will like you at first glance. For some reason, Ajwa suddenly felt a little excited. After everyone came up with a plan for the marriage proposal, the core members of Battle Sect, who were playing the roles of the 4 great emperors, as well as Lu Mukin's Ajwa, quickly set up an inescapable net to prepare for the subsequent marriage proposal. Although it was just an act, it was in fact fishing. Since they were going to catch a fish, they naturally had to make all the necessary preparations. The marriage proposal team had to be luxurious, and couldn't be lower than the standard of a 9-star imperial family in the eternal cultivation world. Furthermore, the team had to be densely packed with experts, and the lowest realm standard had to be Dao God level. The Sea Calming Pearl, Sky Jade, 8 Desolation Ruler, 9-Face Lion Heart. A dazzling array of magic treasures and natural treasures formed a long list that stretched as far as the eye could see. This was a list of treasures from the 4 great emperor palaces. Every item was so precious that it was enough to drive the cultivators of the eternal world crazy. But now, these things were going to be the betrothal gift to the Peng family, which made people sigh. The East Great Emperor sweated when he saw this. Isn't this a little over-prepared? It's just for show. There's no need for East Emperor to worry. Xiangyi laughed. In any case, these things aren't ours, so don't worry too much. East Emperor was speechless. What Ajwa said made so much sense that he was speechless for a moment. Next, they headed straight for the Peng family's headquarters. If it wasn't for the 4 emperors' secret meeting this time, perhaps no one would have known that the Peng family's forces had already spread across the 4 major territories, and that the reason why the Peng family had set up their headquarters in the Central Territory was because it was convenient for trade. On the other hand, it was also because they could control the forces of the 4 territories through this central location, which made it easier for them to distribute the Peng family's spies among the major territories. Although the 4 emperors had sent intelligence personnel to investigate the Peng family before, the information obtained was limited. The universe was so big that the detection of intelligence could not be too obvious, not to mention that this information was not made public. Even though the East Emperor had already judged that the Peng family's power network over the years had probably expanded to an unimaginable level before this secret meeting, when they marked the distribution of the Peng family's major forces as asterisks on the same map, they couldn't help but be shocked. The East Emperor was shocked when he saw the stars all over the map. It seems that the Peng family's ambition is not small. I'm afraid they also have sympathy for the throne, Wang Ying said. East Emperor was also worried about this. The Peng family is too scary. They colluded with the old world. We must not let them seize the general trend. I don't know if we can take this opportunity to suppress them. Wang Ying nodded. Of course. Originally, weakening the Peng family's power was also within our scope, wasn't it? Chapter 1887. Although it was she who had volunteered to dress up as a man to propose marriage, she still couldn't help feeling a little hesitant and nervous when it really came time to do it. After all, a lot of boys didn't have any experience with marriage proposals, let alone a girl like her. And for some reason, she felt that it was a little weird to do it. Her original intention had been to stop Wang Ling from proposing. No, her original intention had been to keep Sun Yinger and Wang Ying together for the sake of righteousness. But it wasn't Wang Ling who had proposed, but she was the one who was going to get married in the end. She had dug a hole for herself. After realizing this, Lotus Sun even felt a little remorseful, and felt that she had been too rash in the end. Also, this was a serious matter, because the success or failure of the marriage proposal would directly affect the course of human cultivators' history. If anything went wrong, she would be a sinner in history. This heavy pressure made it hard for her to breathe, and she kept taking deep breaths on the way to the Peng family's main residence. Lu Qingyi and Yu Yueqing disguised themselves as maids and stayed by her side. Since King Tianquan wasn't around, they didn't have to force themselves to stay in their snake forms, and directly grew legs to look no different from ordinary people. Why are you getting nervous so close to the end? Lu Qingyi asked with a smile as she comforted her. You don't have to feel too heavy of a burden, it's just an act. Lotus Sun understood that, But it was normal for people to reflect on themselves, and the more outstanding they were, the more it was so. She was so nervous that the muscles in her stomach ached, and she was full of regret. If she had obediently listened to Wang Ling and not intervened in this matter, things might not have come to this. Now that the turning point in history had been handed to her, if she messed it up again, she was really worried that her friendship with Wang Ling would plummet to an all-time low. It hadn't been easy for her and Wang Ling to come into contact with each other at this level. At that moment, Lotus Sun's thoughts were all over the place. As her imagination ran wild, she never thought that the person who would comfort her at that moment would actually be Yu Yueqing, whom she had always been on high alert against. You don't think too much at a time like this. Do you think it's your fault that things have become complicated? All of this was planned, including the fact that you gathered so many people to decipher the mysterious text and accidentally fell into this eternal world. It was all planned. Yu Yueqing looked calmly at Lotus Sun and said, "We're actually just pawns used by these seniors in the game. Since he was a chess piece, he just had to follow the plan step by step. Besides, why did Ling Ling agree to let you go? Haven't you considered it at all?" Hearing this, Lotus Sun abruptly raised her head, the expression on her face somewhat frozen. Yes, such an important mission was not child's play. Why had Wang Ling so readily agreed to let her do it? At this time, with Yu Yueqing's reminder, Lotus Sun vaguely began to understand. Ling Ling trusts you, that's why he gave you such an important task, Yu Yueqing said to Lotus Sun with a serious expression. At the same time, when she saw Lotus Sun's astonished expression, she couldn't help but feel amused. What? You looked at me in such a shocked manner, thinking that I would go out of my way to comfort you. Is it unbelievable? No. Taoist master, you misunderstood. You're being insincere again. Yu Yueqing laughed and swung her legs in a very relaxed and contented manner. Actually, I already have someone I like. I know. Lotus Sun lowered her head. It's classmate Wang Ling, right? No. Yu Yueqing shook her head like a rattle. Eh? This time both Lotus Sun and Lu Qingyi were astonished. Those birthday presents you showed off earlier were indeed from Wang Ling, but I just wanted to tease you. Yu Yueqing was very straightforward and directly laid her cards on the table. Oh, there was a time when I was a kid when I really liked Ling Ling, but it wasn't until I became a Taoist and grew up that I realized that kind of feeling. It's probably just a sibling relationship. I think it's better for him to be my older brother than the person Taoist master you likes. Lu Qingyi suddenly asked. Perhaps realizing that she was being too nosy, she quickly waved her hand. It's fine, Taoist master you. It's fine even if you don't tell me, I'm just curious. Yu Yueqing blinked, her eyes sparkling beautifully. When the time comes, I'll naturally tell you. But Ling Ling isn't bad. If I'm rejected in the end, maybe I can use him as a spare tire? Lotus Sun and Yu Yueqing. Spare tire. Yu Yueqing's eyes curved into crescents as she laughed again. You guys can't handle this. AI, how boring. This rather sincere exchange did indeed ease the tension in Lotus Sun's heart a lot. She had a vague feeling that Yu Yueqing's identity wasn't as simple as it seemed. At least for now, in Lotus Sun's eyes, Yu Yueqing really was very mysterious. The Peng family's headquarters was set up on Penglai planet in the central region of the galaxy. This was a dangerous place surrounded by many celestial bodies that contained powerful cosmic energy, and cultivators who passed by were swept up in them from time to time. The Peng family's headquarters here could be said to be like a fortress, easy to defend and difficult to attack. To the outside world, Penglai planet belonged to everyone, but almost all the businesses on it were related to the Peng family. This was an empire that belonged solely to the Peng family. The Peng family's headquarters on Penglai planet was a golden palace with richly carved beams and painted rafters. There were even quite a few carvings of creatures that didn't belong to the ancient cultivation world. These were the carvings of ancient creatures from the ancient world, which the Peng family had grandly carved into the walls as murals. It was clear that the Peng family's arrogance had reached a shocking level. At the border of Penglai planet, as Lotus Sun and the others' carriages passed by, a group of ancient city guards quickly surrounded them on disc-shaped magic artifacts. These neutral guards, who had originally been brought together by the four great emperors of the four regions to maintain the stability of the Central Region galaxy, had now become the targets of the Peng family's instigation. Yi's great emperor was very dissatisfied with this. Holding his breath, he looked at the group of Penglai planet's ancient city guards and asked them in a very arrogant manner, "Who are you? What are you doing here? Do you know what kind of place Penglai planet is? I remember that the Central Region galaxy isn't under the jurisdiction of any power," East Great Emperor said indifferently as he stared at the ancient city guards in front of him, his expression fearless. "Today, I brought my family's young master to Penglai planet to propose marriage." "Propose marriage?" One of the ancient city guards smiled, extremely curious. "Everyone here is from the Peng family. Who can you go to propose marriage to? I remember that this isn't something a guard like you should be asking." Yi's great emperor did his best to restrain his temper. "If you don't tell us why you're here, we won't let you pass." The guard crossed his arms and laughed wildly, but very quickly his smile froze in the next second. Chapter 1888. Relying on their status on Penglai, the Peng family was so powerful that even the ancient city guards had been assimilated. They were fierce, chivalrous, and extremely arrogant. It could be seen from their attitude toward outsiders that the carriage Wang Ling and the others were in had a clear 9-star imperial family symbol, symbolizing that the people in the carriage were direct descendants of some great emperor. Even so, this group of assimilated ancient city guards didn't take them seriously. They were completely unreasonable and looked down on this group of great emperors. Such an arrogant attitude undoubtedly made the great East sovereign very angry. He instinctively wanted to slap this guard in the face. But just as he raised his hand, Wang Ying forcibly controlled his body and held him down. "Just use your aura to intimidate them. If you slap them, this guard will die. It won't be good for our subsequent plans." As soon as he finished speaking, his aura was transmitted at the same time. Wang Ying had only released a little spiritual pressure, but the expressions of this group of ancient city guards instantly changed dramatically, and they could no longer laugh. As if they had been petrified, they stood where they were and didn't dare move at all. "They're done. Their realm will stop here for the rest of their lives, and they won't advance any further," Monk Jin Deng said at that moment, having seen some clues. This wasn't just an ordinary aura deterrence. At the same time, some nomological curses had been added to make these arrogant ancient city guards receive the most terrifying punishment as a cultivator. To them, this was a punishment that was far more miserable than death. Even so, Yi's great emperor was still depressed. "These people eat the public grain of our 4 territories, but they betray their master for glory. They really can't be punished." It was hard to imagine that Yi's great emperor, who had always been gentle and kind among the 4 emperors, could be so furious. If the other emperors hadn't been possessed by outsiders, it was likely that these ancient city guards would have died as well. As if expecting this reaction from Yi's great emperor, Wang Ying said indifferently, "The environment can change people. Vanity, privilege, and everything that can tarnish the human heart may make these people think that they are superior to others, and thus completely forget that they are just dust in this world." Everyone sank into deep thought at Wang Ying's words, and even Wang Ling was a little surprised. He had never thought that his own shadow could actually think so deeply. Sometimes he would think about what the essence of cultivation was, and occasionally weave a few golden sentences in his mind. However, he had never shared these words with anyone else. This was because he realized that there were too few people who could truly understand him, or rather, they simply didn't exist. The loneliness of being at the top could only be described as, "It's too cold at the top." The East Great Emperor tried hard to calm himself down. In the end, he listened to Wang Ying's words obediently, and did not kill these ancient city guards in front of him. Of course, although Wang Ying's curse was real, it didn't give the ancient city guards a chance. If they can come to their senses in this life and rein in the horse before the precipice, this curse will naturally be lifted. Unfortunately, they've already sunk too deep. Wang Ying sighed. What on earth did the Peng family instill in them? Lu Qingyi looked at these petrified ancient city guards and felt it was a great pity. They had cultivated for more than 1,000 years, and had originally been chosen to guard an ancient city in a central region. If they could wait until the handover and return to their respective armies, they would definitely have boundless prospects in the future. But who would have thought that these people would choose to court death on this day? It could only be said that this was a kind of destiny. A number of carriages bearing the mark of the 9-star imperial family finally landed outside Punglai City. The spirit light from the Prung family's bejeweled main residence reached the sky even through the city walls. Looking down from the sky, this golden residence had been shocking, and now that they saw it face to face, they felt the Pung family's domineering nature even more. Wang Ling and the others wanted to park the carriages directly in front of the Prung family's main residence, but they couldn't stop on such a wide street. It was only when they approached Punglai City that they noticed the luxurious carriages and all kinds of divine beasts lined up in an orderly manner in front of the Prung family's main residence. What's going on? There's a traffic jam in the eternal world? In the Pegasus carriage, Lotus Sun frowned. I'll go and ask. Zhang Zide immediately got out of the carriage and used the spirit stones he had prepared as a tip. He casually grabbed a passing rogue cultivator and asked him. After receiving a large sum of money for the inquiry, the rogue cultivator's unhappy expression at being stopped instantly smoothed out. It's like this, these carriages are all here to propose marriage. I don't think you're also here to propose marriage, are you? So many to propose marriage? Everyone was astonished. This was the information they had received after integrating the intelligence network of the 4 emperors, and was probably first-hand information. But no one would have thought that the marriage proposals had actually already begun. Furthermore, there was a long line in front of the Prung family's main residence. Zhang Zide instantly understood. The only possibility was that the Prung family had spread the news locally and started to openly recruit people. But this made things completely different. No matter how big the local families on Punglai were, they couldn't be as big as the Prung family, so the son-in-law they found definitely couldn't compare to the Pung family in terms of family background. At most, he would be a live-in son-in-law. Furthermore, he wouldn't be the Dragon King's live-in son-in-law. This astonished everyone on Wang Ling's side. This Pung Basin was the daughter of the Prung family. Why would she find a live-in son-in-law who didn't match their family background? How anxious was she to get herself married off? Miss Pung is a very eccentric person, and this marriage proposal was her idea to begin with. Lord Pung especially dotes on her, so Miss Pung practically handles everything herself. This passerby rogue cultivator looked like he was watching a melon. If Miss Pung takes a fancy to anyone, whether it's an official marriage or a live-in son-in-law, it's a supreme honor. Once you're on the Prung family's big boat, you definitely won't lack cultivation resources in the future. What else do you know? Zhang Zide asked as he gave him another bag of spirit stones. The passerby rogue cultivator nodded with a satisfied expression. I advise you to leave. This Miss Pung is a very lustful person. Although it'll be very touching to be on the Prung family's boat, she might overdraw her kidneys. Overdraw her kidneys? Lustful? Why do you think so? Because I heard that Miss Pung isn't just going to marry a live-in son-in-law today. This long line is to recruit a harem for herself. How many have you chosen so far? Not yet, because the requirements are too high. The passerby rogue cultivator sighed. Ha ha ha, I was just watching the fun. There was a guy called Kushwan who was rejected by Miss Pung. She said that his kidneys weren't good. Chapter 1889. As it turned out, it wasn't as easy to maintain order nowadays as the internet made it out to be. Even choosing a son-in-law had to be done according to the basic rules. The eldest daughter of the Prung family was a pearl in the palm of the Prung family's hand. Although grandfather Pung had given the right to choose his future son-in-law to eldest Miss Pung, he had certainly given her the lowest standards. According to that itinerant cultivator, the old man had formulated very strict regulations on the virtues of a son-in-law. Take the initiative to inform your wife or family members of any cultivation activities or cultivation gatherings, and apply no later than sunset. Under no circumstances are you allowed to drink or indulge in alcohol. If you meet someone who urges you to drink, you must immediately stay away from them, break off relations with them, and never associate with them again. If necessary, you can directly draw your sword and kill them. In public, under no circumstances are you allowed to eat anything that smells too strong or to smoke. You must remain quiet and constantly remind yourself that you are a quiet and handsome man. You must not wear revealing clothes. You can't wear a vest or sleeveless shirt, or wear shorts that go above your knees, and you can't go bare-chested. At the same time, you should always pay attention to your personal appearance at home. You must walk properly. When you walk, your back must be straight and your gaze forward, and your eyes must be firm and aboveboard. You mustn't sneak a peek at other women, and you must maintain a kind of awe-inspiring righteousness at all times. Your steps must be just right, and can't be outward or inward. Before you are officially married, you are absolutely not allowed to have sex before marriage. Furthermore, you are not allowed to be alone with the opposite sex or spend the night outside, not even if it's necessary for business. Because business in the cultivation world requires dual cultivation. You must report to your wife in advance before you buy anything worth more than 500 mixed spirit stones. If you don't have money, you can ask your wife, and she will provide you with a loan depending on the situation. The annualized rate depends on the situation, and can range from 8% to 999%. If the person is good-looking and meets all the other requirements, you can ignore all the above male virtues regulations. Seeing this, everyone couldn't help sucking in breaths of cold air and sighing heavily. No one thought that this eldest Miss Peng's father would actually be so honest. Good heavens, it's too hard to ask for direct conditions. I can't do it even if I'm so well behaved. As someone who already had a partner, Wang Zhen felt very sad about this. He even felt that this journey of eternity was already a very bad example for Lu Qingyi. What if Lu Qingyi imitated these men's ethics rules after he went back, and made a new version of modern cultivation men's ethics rules for him? He really wouldn't be able to live on then. Seeing Wang Zhen's fearful expression, Lu Qingyi was very satisfied. Given her outstanding training skills, even if she didn't use these rules to restrain Wang Zhen, he would definitely be a good man who abided by male ethics. The most important reason was that Wang Zhen was timid. To put it bluntly, he didn't have the courage to challenge his wife's bottom line. The most he was that out that out that out that out that out to him out to him, and out to out to this out that this to. After standing there in a daze for a long while, he hurriedly drove his spirit sword away. This was too frightening. Even with his experience, he had never seen two women so intimate in the eternal world. Thus, this itinerant cultivator left as if he was fleeing. In the process, he seemed to think of something embarrassing, and he couldn't help blushing. These were two women. It turned out that two women could do it. He felt that he was too inexperienced. In contrast, he felt that his friend, who had trained his little female cat to cultivate into a beautiful human girl, and then married him, was a lot more normal. As if they could hear this cultivator's thoughts, the corners of Wang Ling's and Wang Ying's mouths twitched at the same time. Marrying a female cat that he had trained into a beautiful human girl. This was obviously even more outrageous. At that moment, Wang Ling's heart was crumbling. Looking at the long queue in front of him, he couldn't help feeling a deep sense of despair. At this rate, the sun would be setting by the time they arrived. Furthermore, it seemed that the Peng family's headquarters had come up with a limit on numbers, which was to say that they might not even get a chance to propose today. Fortunately, because of Zhang Zipei, East's great emperor now had a lot of funds at his disposal. As long as he had enough money, he could buy the number of the person in front of him. Brother, our master is in a hurry. I wonder if you can be magnanimous? Zhang Zipei asked on his behalf with a smile on his face. The person in front of them was also a noble young master. He looked elegant and seemed to be easy to talk to. However, in the eyes of the Peng family's headquarters, he was nothing more than a live-in son-in-law. Who are you? You want to cut the line? I won't cut the line for free. I'll pay you. As long as you let us swap places, we're willing to pay you 500,000 chaos spirit stones as a token of our gratitude, Zhang Zipei said, holding out a palm. The person in the carriage seemed to have heard Zhang Zipei's voice, and after hesitating for a moment, he decided to swap places. After all, whether or not he could become a live-in son-in-law was still a question, but 500,000 chaos spirit stones was real money. After swapping places with satisfaction, the elegant young master in the carriage smiled at Wang Ling's carriage. "Brother, let me give you a piece of advice. Money is useless. If this Miss Peng doesn't like you, you'll become a live-in son-in-law at most. How many people have been rejected before you? I think Miss Peng's standards are too high, and normal people won't like her. Then why did you come to line up?" Zhang Zipei snickered. The young master smiled. "Just think of it as a lottery ticket. What if I win? That's endless glory and wealth. This Peng family's headquarters has quite a background now. Everyone says that old Master Peng will be the future fifth emperor." As soon as he said this, the elegant young master's expression changed dramatically as he suddenly felt a huge chill coming from the carriage in front of him. It was the pressure of East Great Emperor, which immediately scared the elegant young master into silence, and he didn't dare speak at all. Just like that, Zhang Zipei spent money to buy places, and soon led Wang Ling, Lotus Sun and the others to the main gate of the Peng family's headquarters. A steward of the Peng family's headquarters stepped forward. He was dressed in luxurious silk clothes, and even the patterns on them were embroidered with gold. When he saw Wang Ling and Lotus Sun's convoy, he didn't care about the 9-star imperial family emblem at all, and asked in a lazy and arrogant tone, "Who are you? Tell me your name." Chapter 1890. Wang Ling could see that the pattern on this steward's body wasn't from the eternal world, but was clearly the mark of the old world. At the bottom of the pattern was a surging wave woven from golden immortals and blue silk threads. Several tentacles from the old world poked out of the surface of the sea in a strange, beautiful arc. Wang Ling was all too familiar with these tentacles from the old world, because not long ago, he had hunted down a few tentacle-like creatures from Dopey from the old world for newborn Wang Nuan to satisfy her hunger. Such unbridled behavior was enough to show how overbearing and rampant the Peng family was on Penglai. There was only a bit of time left before the sun completely set. Wang Ling, Lotus Sun and the others had bribed everyone along the way to make it to the last round of interviews for the day. Looking at the time, a lot of people knew that they were the last group of people for the day. But the people behind them didn't immediately disperse, even though they knew that they wouldn't be able to make it today. The young talents who had come to propose got out of their cars one after another, intending to join in on the fun. After all, the last person to be interviewed was a nouveau riche who had bribed his way to the front with money. A lot of people wanted to see the Peng family pour cold water on this nouveau riche. There was a huge gap between the rich and the poor in the eternal world, but there were still plenty of rich people. Given the Peng family's status on Penglai, ordinary nouveau riche definitely wouldn't be interested in them. So when Wang Ling and the others arrived, this steward's expression didn't look good. He had been observing Wang Ling and the others' motorcade for a long time. They had actually bribed their way here with money? Just as the housekeeper of the Peng family revealed a look of disdain, Zhang Zibai took a step forward and took out a jade box from his sleeve. He pretended to respectfully open the jade box and handed it to the housekeeper with both hands. "Hello, housekeeper. My young master is here to propose marriage and hopes that housekeeper can lead the way. This is a small token of my appreciation. I hope you won't mind." Heh, the steward's disdain didn't diminish, and he smiled contemptuously. Heh, did they think his Peng family was a vegetarian? He hated this kind of nouveau riche the most. He was the dignified steward of the Peng family, and he was a somewhat famous figure on Penglai who didn't care how many rich people there were. A mere extraterrestrial nouveau riche actually dared to stand in front of him. Wait, this was... At first, he did not look carefully at the contents of the box. After a glance, he realized that it was an elixir, and it was no ordinary elixir. When the elixir in the jade box emitted a dazzling luster, the Peng clan's general manager's hand speed was extremely fast. He immediately closed the lid of the jade box. This alertness was actually because he didn't want the treasures and pills in the box to be seen by other busybodies. As the steward of the Peng family, his eyes were extremely sharp. He clearly knew that this was an ancestral Dao pill. This was a rare medicinal pill for breaking through to the Daofather realm. Only great emperors could refine it. In reality, Among the people who came to propose today, there were indeed many who came in the name of the 3-star, 6-star, or 9-star imperial family. However, it was the first time that the Prung family's chief steward had seen someone who used the Dao ancestor pill as a stepping stone. Although he didn't like this nouveau riche in front of him, he couldn't help feeling a little hesitant in the face of this Dao ancestor pill. For him, this kind of greeting gift was like giving him a pillow when he was sleepy. He had been stuck at the Dao God realm for a long time, and was just a step away from breaking through to Dao ancestor. However, he had always lacked comprehension. If he didn't break through with external help, he was afraid that his realm would stop here for the rest of his life. In the next moment, his expression softened a little as he personally accepted the jade box and stepped aside. "Young master, you're too polite. I will kindly accept this gift. Please come in, young master, but there are still a few more tests. If you can pass all of them, you can officially marry my family's young lady. If you can't, young master, you can consider becoming a son-in-law or directly leave." Understood. Inside the carriage, Lotus Sun took a deep breath and stepped out of the exclusive royal carriage of the 9-star imperial family under everyone's gazes. To tell the truth, she didn't feel any stage fright. Before she had fallen in love with Wang Ling and learned to keep a low profile, she had once enjoyed being the center of attention. But now, it could only be said that she had returned to her old profession. As the future young master of Huagua Water Curtain Group, she had an innate ability to control the overall situation and confidence. This kind of bearing couldn't be considered ordinary. Coupled with the exquisite makeup that Lu Qingyi and Yu Yueqing had put on Lotus Sun, her immortal aptitude was already enough to stun everyone present. Which territory is this imperial family from? How come I've never seen this person before? Look at the patterns on his body, which combine the styles of the 4 territories. He definitely has an extraordinary background. Maybe he's favored by all 4 emperors at the same time. My God, there's someone like this in the world? The busybodies on the street who had joined in on the fun immediately started talking among themselves. To be honest, when he saw Lotus Sun in person, even the director of the Prung family was stunned for a moment. He believed himself to be very knowledgeable and knew almost all the famous families in the 4 regions, but he didn't remember such a person at all. To have the patterns of the 4 territories directly tattooed on the same robe, this alone was enough to prove that this person's identity was no small matter. Before young master enters, please tell me who you are. My name is Wang Rongxia, Lotus Sun answered without hesitation. Her identity was completely fake, and had been created by the core members of the battle sect who had impersonated the 4 emperors, so everything about this fake identity had been done flawlessly. Lotus Sun had already thought of a fake name. This was made up of the name of the character she had impersonated, Xia Xinyan, the homonym of her own name, and the surname of the person she liked. Wang Rongxia. The director of the Prung family carefully chewed on this name, and began to do a carpet search in his mind, but it was as if he had lost his memory and couldn't remember anything. No matter how much he rummaged through the memories of those prestigious families, he couldn't find such a person. Of course, he also began to suspect that Lotus Sun was a fake identity. But even if it was a fake identity, the price to pay was a little too high. A Dao ancestor pill as a stepping stone. What kind of wealth was this? It didn't seem fake at all. Thus, the steward of the Prung family finally didn't stop her, and welcomed her in. So it's young master Wang Rongxia. Please come in, young master. In any case, there were still a few more tests, and he didn't think Lotus Sun would be able to pass them. The person in charge of the first test was a middle-aged man who looked like a scholar. He sat in front of a table and propped up his chin with his fingers crossed as he looked at Lotus Sunday. Sweeping a glance at the chair in front of the table, he smiled meaningfully. Young master, please take a seat. If you want to marry my family's young miss, the first test is a discussion of Dao. Okay. Lotus Sun nodded. Back in the carriage, East Great Emperor had already guessed this part. The middle-aged man nodded, then began to ask, there are countless paths of cultivation. May I ask, young master, how should you find your own path? Lotus Sun thought for a moment, then answered, there are no paths in this world, but when there are people, there are paths. As soon as she said this, the whole audience burst into thunderous applause. The middle-aged man was clearly stunned when he heard this. Good answer, young master. Then may I ask, if someone is unable to break through after a long time and can't feel any hope, what would you think? Hope is attached to existence. With existence there is hope, and with hope, there is light. Good, easy to understand. The middle-aged man was already completely stupefied. He scratched his head, then continued to ask, May I ask, young master, how do you understand life and death? Lotus Sun. Dead life has already decayed. I am very happy with this decay, because I know that it isn't empty. The middle-aged man was shocked. Young master is so young. How can you say such a thing? Lotus Sun smiled. Is this also a question? The middle-aged man shook his head. No, it's just a personal question. Young master, you don't have to answer. Lotus Sun said. It's all because my master taught me well. The middle-aged man. May I ask, who is young master's master? Which sect is he from? Lotus Sun smiled. I don't belong to any sect, and people call me Brother Sun. Chapter 1891. Wednesday, January 7th. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun didn't return all night and didn't report to school the next day, which attracted the attention of the two families. Sunny Yuan paced around anxiously. He only had one granddaughter, but she disappeared without a trace. Most importantly, as far as Sunny Yuan knew, Lotus Sun had always been extremely obedient and well-behaved, so there was no way she would disappear for no reason. Now that she had disappeared, however, Sunny Yuan began to feel a strong sense of crisis. The incident with the Shadow Stream killers last year was still vivid in his mind as if it had happened yesterday. His heart was a mess and he didn't know what to do at the moment. He had called Audiobook and found that he had also disappeared. Using his connections, he had finally found Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Senior Immortal, I only have one granddaughter. You have to tell me the truth. Do you really not know where she went? Sunny Yuan paced back and forth in front of Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's desk in the head of Battlesec's office with his hands clasped behind his back. He was sweating profusely because of his ancestral imagination genes. And he was thinking of a lot of terrible things. Don't worry, old man. I've already sent people to look for her. Miss Sun is naturally safe and sound. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said reassuringly. In fact, he was also privy to this matter. How could he, as the head of Battlesect, not know where so many core members had been mobilized? As for why they hadn't returned overnight, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's guess was that they might have run into some trouble, so he had called Wang Ling last night, and realized that he couldn't get through to him. Thus, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's guess was that Wang Ling had to be with this group of people on a similar mission. So with Wang Ling around, there was no need to panic at all. It was only a matter of time before they were dealt with. They just needed to be patient and wait for them to reply on their own. Senior Immortal, do you have any basis for this? My Rongrong isn't even at the Golden Core stage. In this big world, it's too easy for Foundation establishment cultivators to get into accidents. If someone bullies her, or, just as Sunny Yuan was thinking of something even more terrifying, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal hurriedly interrupted him. Old man, don't think too much, he sighed in his heart. It was only because Old Man Sun didn't know Lotus Sun's true battle strength that there were a lot of things that he couldn't explain clearly. A Foundation establishment cultivator was being bullied? Of course I don't exist. Your granddaughter has Ling Jinren's backing. It's already good enough that she doesn't bully others. This was the #1 Foundation establishment stage cultivator on Earth. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal could still vividly remember how he had cut down the old god of the god race with one slash back then. Back then, it hadn't even reached the level of 9 Core's Mysterious Sea. Now, the Mysterious Sea had 9 Heaven's Path magic cubes fused into it. It was practically unstoppable. However, when he answered the phone earlier, he had already expected that Grandpa Sun would do this. So he had already thought of a way to comfort him. After fiddling with it for a bit, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal took something out of his sleeve. It was a Dao talisman that contained enormous spirit power, and Sunny Yuan's eyes immediately lit up. This is Death Substitute Talisman. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said. Actually, this was the surplus that Wang Ling had asked the two life and death heavenly Dao brothers to set up last time. It was just that he was now using it as an excuse to comfort someone. He said, I came across this by chance and wanted to give it to Miss Sun as a gift. But Miss Sun wouldn't accept it, so I thought of a way to secretly bind it to her. In other words, the owner of this death substitute talisman is Miss Sunday. The death substitute talisman hasn't been activated yet, which proves that Miss Sun is definitely safe. We just need to increase our search and wait for a reply. Hearing this, Sun Yuan finally let out a long sigh of relief. That's good, that's good. His nerves eased, and he even forgot to ask about the true origin of this death substitute talisman. After all, it was almost impossible to find anyone in this world who had the ability to draw this kind of Dao talisman. Looking at Sun Yuan's relieved expression, grenade-throwing senior immortal had mixed feelings in his heart. Looking up at the sky, he felt that Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch, whom he had sent out earlier, should already have news from Wang Ling. As a real clone, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch's thoughts and consciousness were completely independent, but he could still sense the original body. Thus, he had very easily found the apartment building where Li Xian lived, and from the security guard at the entrance, he had more or less guessed what had happened. Because this apartment building was now part of Huagua Water Curtain Group's property, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch's first guess was that Wang Ling and Lotus Sun had definitely come here to investigate this Li Xian, and had definitely found something in the apartment building. Choosing a small, secluded corner near the apartment building, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch enlarged his spiritual senses, and relying on his amazing senses, he used a kind of teleportation technique to accurately pinpoint Wang Ling's location. At the same time, the three members of the Eternal Imperial family, the Skeleton Prince, the Lion Man and Meng Liuli, who had been standing guard next to Wang Ling, were all shocked. After a moment of embarrassment, Meng Liuli looked at Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch, who looked very much like Wang Ling, and asked with a look of sudden realization, You're Ling Zhenren's clone? No, you look more like a real clone. As a member of the Eternal Imperial family, Meng Liuli had a certain level of knowledge. Seeing that these three people were concentrating on standing guard for Wang Ling, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch relaxed a little. He could tell that these three people didn't have any ill intentions. Otherwise they would have already attacked him the moment he landed. I understand, you must be worried because you couldn't find Ling Zhenren, right? Don't worry, Ling Zhenren is fine. He just followed the path of this mysterious character into the world it's in. The Lion Man's rough voice rang out. They were truly very serious as they worked exceptionally hard to protect Wang Ling, abiding by their duty as guards. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch couldn't help but laugh at their hard work. But now that they had finally found Wang Ling's whereabouts, he heaved a long sigh of relief. He immediately took out his phone, intending to report back. The text had been sent to grenade-throwing senior immortal, Father Wang and Wang Muyu. I found Ling Ling. I knew this kid would be fine, Father Wang said after looking at his phone. Then what did the school teachers say? Mother Wang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This child, he didn't even tell us that he wasn't coming back tonight. Even if he's trying to safeguard world peace, he should at least have sent a text. He probably ran into some kind of trouble and couldn't keep track of the time. But it's fine, Father Wang said. If there really is a problem, Aran Wan can go and help at any time. Yeah. On the other side, Wang Wan had already put on a diaper and was ready to go. Chapter 1892. Wang Muyu had played his part these days and obeyed all orders. He just wanted to see Wang Ling and Lotus Sun as soon as possible. In the end, the days that he had been longing for passed by one after another, and he hadn't expected them to stand him up again in the end. He wasn't an insensible child, and immediately knew that Wang Ling and Lotus Sun had probably run into some trouble. When he thought of the extremely realistic dream he had a few days ago, his rainbow dragon heart immediately tensed up. The dragon clan's prophetic dreams might not be as accurate as Wang Ling's, but the chances of them hitting the mark weren't low either. He dreamed of someone stabbing Wang Ling in the back. A white knife went in and a red knife came out, directly piercing Wang Ling's heart from behind, and then stirring in his chest in a strange spiral. Wang Muyu had been startled awake by this nightmare, drenched in sweat. He was well aware that this was a prophecy, and that Wang Ling was about to be assassinated. Fortunately, he had received a reply from Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch. He knew that his father wasn't acting strangely, it was just that he might be entangled in some troublesome matter, and would need some time before he could extricate himself. Wang Muyu breathed a sigh of relief and looked out of the window. In the huge Sun family's castle, and the bedroom that was the size of several living rooms, he was the only one here. The feeling of longing and loneliness surged in his heart in an instant. The high-tech toys and all kinds of imported snacks and drinks which Old Man Sun had meticulously prepared in the bedroom had all become tasteless at that moment. The maids in the Sun family's castle all had standard professional smiles. Wang Muyu could see that no matter what kind of question he asked, the other party had a standard set of words to answer, making it impossible for him to vent his anger on this group of people. Wang Muyu rang the bell, and very quickly, a maid pushed open the door and came in. Looking steadily out the window, he asked, "When will Grandpa Sun be back?" The maid thought for a moment, then replied patiently, "Young Master Muyu, don't worry. Old Master may or may not be on his way back. We can only find out after a few hours or even longer when the gate of the castle is pushed open." Wang Muyu. Sure enough, the maid's reply was the same as if she hadn't said anything. Although he'd long since figured out the language system of this group of servants, Wang Muyu's heart was still on the verge of collapse. All he needed to know was whether or not he would be back, or when he would be back. In the end, this group of people gave him the answer of Schrodinger's cat. Even their replies were filled with philosophical thoughts. "I'm going out." Wang Muyu sighed. He couldn't wait any longer and prepared to leave. "Young Master Muyu, it is very dangerous for you to go out now. It was already so late. Why don't I just wait here obediently? If you go out..." Just when the maid wanted to continue arguing with him, Wang Muyu interrupted her bluntly. "Okay, then I'll listen to you. I won't go out." "That's good." The maid nodded in satisfaction and left the bedroom. Wang Muyu knew that he wouldn't be able to leave if he applied normally, so he could only trick the maid. Now that he knew Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch's location, his current plan was to leave a clone in the Sun family's ancient castle, so that his real body could go out and meet up with Wang Ling. In the end, just as he was about to move out, a familiar and piercingly cold aura pierced through the air outside the Sun family's ancient castle, and Wang Muyu was almost instantly on high alert. He couldn't retract the 7-colored dragon horns on his head, and under the sudden pressure, they instantly grew out from the 2 horns on his forehead. They glowed with prismatic colors like colored glass, and were a beautiful fluorescent color in the night, which was especially eye-catching. "It's you." Wang Muyu's eyes were vigilant as he stared in a certain direction outside the window. A figure with dragon wings spread out on his back landed in the moonlight, as if he had been teleported here. The man wore familiar diamond gloves and held a black umbrella, and there was a domineering look in his eyes. Wang Muyu hadn't expected Clear Swamp to choose this time to appear again. The matter with the holy race hadn't been fully resolved, and these resurrected dragon descendants had come to pick a fight again. Wang Muyu was a little annoyed, but the main reason was that his trip had been blocked. He wanted to see Wang Ling, but had been stopped at this time. Crossing his arms, Clear Swamp smiled coldly in the air. "Every debt has a debtor. The other people in this castle have nothing to do with me. As long as you come with me, it's fine. Do you still want to get beaten up?" Wang Muyu stared at Clear Swamp. "You're no match for me on your own. You haven't fully matured yet. As long as that person isn't here, it's hard to say who will emerge victorious." Clear Swamp smiled. It was only then that Wang Muyu realized with a start that this had actually been a plan from the very beginning. Clear Swamp and his group had been taking advantage of the time difference to strike while Wang Ling, Lotus Sun and the other core members of Battle Sect were in the mysterious text's world. Their real target had been him from the very beginning. It was just that they had been quiet for a long time, which was unexpected. It could only be said that Baijia's personality had changed, and he really wasn't the Baizha of the past. Such a sophisticated plan required a lot of patience. In the past, Baizha had been an impatient person who had always thought that he was invincible, and would have no problem dealing with Wang Ling. In the end, every time he got anxious, he would be beaten up. Bai Zhe, on the other hand, had continued to grow after repeated failures, and had become an outstanding strategist. This was indeed a little unexpected. At this moment, Wang Muyu's expression became serious. He stared at Jingzhe, who was hovering in the void, and felt that the other party had become stronger than when he first saw him. It was a change that was close to being reborn. It had not been a long time. According to the human cultivation world, it had not even been a month. Yet it had grown to such an extent. But Wang Muyu didn't panic. Clear Swamp had indeed become stronger, but while it looked like he had been playing around, he had actually been going through all kinds of hard training. It looks like you don't want to go with me, so I'll have to take you back by force. In the next second, Clear Swamp attacked. He showed no mercy as he attacked with lightning. With a snap of his fingers, thunder surged in the sky, and tens of thousands of lightning bolts turned into a cage that enveloped Wang Muyu. Oomph! Wang Muyu snorted. He opened the window and his little body directly jumped out. In the next moment, the magnificent rainbow dragon descendant behind him spread out to form an impenetrable barrier in front of him. The moment the electric cage approached, Wang Muyu directly flapped his dragon wings and smashed it to pieces. He was a master of the 10,000 dragon gene. Wang Muyu thought that Clear Swamp was indulging in fantasy if he thought that this electric cage could trap him. But his expression didn't relax from beginning to end. Looking at Clear Swamp's calm expression, he felt that the other party had come prepared, and there might be even more unexpected things waiting for him. What should I do? Should I look for Auntie Nuan? That was what Wang Muyu thought at that moment. Chapter 1893. At the same time, in Li Xian's apartment, the three members of the royal family suddenly saw Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch look in one direction with a vigilant expression. Protecting Wang Muyu was part of Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch's responsibility. He had sensed that something was wrong with Wang Muyu, which was why he was so vigilant. But for a real clone, the safety of the main body was always the top priority. Based on the primary and secondary law, he couldn't leave Wang Ling's side now. Even though Wang Ling had 3 guardians of the eternal imperial family, he still didn't feel that this was stable enough. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch. If you have something to do, you can go first. We're here, the skeleton prince volunteered. However, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch's indifferent reply was, even with the 3 of you, there's no guarantee that his lord will be safe. The 3 of us are the eternal imperial family. I know. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch nodded with a smile. But you're still too weak. The skeleton prince and the other 2 felt their hearts wrench when they heard this. They had kindly offered to stand guard here, but in the end, they had been doused with cold water. This was something they had never expected. In fact, it wasn't that Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch looked down on these 3 eternal imperial family members, but had come to this conclusion based on the current situation and repeated comparisons. If they were dealing with an ordinary eternal being, leaving 3 eternal imperial family members alive would definitely be enough. But now that the opponent was from the Dragon Clan, everything was uncertain. The reason why Wang Ling hadn't killed Bai Zhe earlier was also part of his plan, and Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch was also aware of this plan. Bai Zhe was now particularly cautious and wouldn't act rashly. Once the other side launched a large-scale attack, he would definitely reveal all his trump cards. In Wang Ling's eyes, the daily harassment was already child's play. Bai Zhe also knew that this method wouldn't be able to completely destroy Wang Ling, so both sides were now laying out a big plan. Bai Zhe was waiting for his trump cards to be fully prepared before launching an all-out attack. Wang Ling, on the other hand, was waiting for Bai Zhe to launch an all-out attack before directly catching them all in one fell swoop, not giving the other side any chance to turn the tables. Looking at the current situation, it was very clear that Wang Muyu was a very crucial element in Bai Zhe's overall plan. It could be seen from the repeated robberies that the other party had planned. Although he was also waiting for Bai Zhe to launch an all-out attack, this didn't conflict with protecting Wang Muyu, even if he wasn't used to this little guy's sudden arrival at first. But after spending so much time with him, he felt like he had a younger brother, and started to develop faint feelings that he couldn't bear to part with. Wang Muyu was too much like him. Even their fondness for crispy noodle snacks was identical. As the saying went, it was hard to find a bosom friend. Based on this alone, there was no way Wang Ling would let Wang Muyu go. So now that Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch knew about the situation on Wang Muyu's side and couldn't leave, he could only send a text message to old Wang's family to ask for help. Very quickly, he received a reply text message. It was a short voice message. Using the voice-to-text function, it displayed the word "ya." This was little girl Nwan's direct reply on Father Wang's phone. Although the little girl wasn't even half a year old, she was already very familiar with smart devices. A few days ago, she had even gone online to buy the latest celebrity brand diapers for herself. When the courier delivered the diapers home, it was Wang Nwan who personally signed for them. She directly wrote the word Nwan on the delivery box with her foot, which horrified the courier. In his heart, he exclaimed that children nowadays were developing too fast, which made him feel a little frustrated. When he was half a year old, he didn't even know how to sit. This little girl actually knew how to shop online and sign for deliveries on her own. This was too outrageous. It's a message from Crispy Noodles. They said something happened at the Sun family's castle. Father Wang looked at Wang Nwan. The child in front of him wasn't even half a year old, but was already shouldering the heavy responsibility of saving the world. For a moment he was inexplicably moved. He picked little girl Nwan up and looked at her lovingly. Nwan, don't force yourself too much. Are you too tired? Wang Nwan shook her head at lightning speed. Although she was only half a year old, she already understood the principle that with great power came great responsibility. As his younger sister, she could directly feel how good he was to her. It was precisely because of this that now that her big brother was in trouble, she naturally had to help him as his younger sister. But once he left, Father Wang and Mother Wang's safety would be unguaranteed. So before she officially left, Wang Nwan left her shadow behind and hid it under the sofa in old Wang's house. Dragon breath filled the sky as the huge shadow of a dragon soared through the sky. Dozens of lightning dragons coiled high in the sky, and dark clouds covered the sky as if they were about to collapse. This was the power of Pure Zay's core world. Wang Muyu was well aware that he had already fallen into another of Pure Zay's cages, but this was of his own accord, because it was better than hurting innocent people. As for Jing Zay, he fulfilled his promise. He didn't attack the innocent and only targeted him. Wang Muyu knew that this was a kind of arrogance that stemmed from being a descendant of the dragon clan. Wang Muyu still had a trace of hope for the lightning dragon. He believed that the lightning dragon had a sense of justice and was just being used. At that moment in the core world, Pure Zay was the ruler and god of this world, and possessed an even more powerful sense of oppression. Wang Muyu felt that it would be very difficult to persuade such a god with words. So I have no choice but to beat you into submission? At that moment, Wang Muyu sighed in his heart. As Pure Zay had said, he hadn't fully matured yet, but he had improved a lot during this time. Although he had yet to experience what it felt like to fight against the pressure of the core world, he felt that since his dad could ignore the power of other people's core worlds, he could do the same. Buzz. In the blink of an eye, rainbow glass dragon breath surrounded Wang Ling's body, and elemental dragons of different colors hovered around him. Colorful dragon wings spread out at that moment, and with a kind of light, Wang Ling looked like a beautiful splash ink painting with the charm of an ancient dragon. Wang Muyu had grown up. The dragon breath in his body was purer than when he had been born, and Pure Zay was greatly shocked by this astonishing rate of growth. Even though he didn't show it on the surface, Wang Muyu's growth made him suddenly realize why Baizha had racked his brains to snatch Wang Muyu back. At that moment, he understood everything. Because Wang Muyu was the hope for the revival of the Dragon Clan. The hope for the Dragon Clan to become the overlord of the universe again. Chapter 1894. Jing Zay soared into the sky, and the power of thunder surged around him. His divine power was surging, and the pressure was oppressive. In the heyday of the Dragon Clan, a battle between two dragons was an extremely terrible thing, because it would indicate a destructive planetary war. However, in Jing Zay's inner world, with the help of the eternal moon starlight bestowed by Baizha, his entire inner world had been strengthened. It was as if a layer of tempered film had been stuck on it. No matter how turbulent the inside was, the walls of the inner world remained intact. This made Wang Muyu, who had noticed this scene at the same time, feel relieved. With such a strong inner wall, he and Jingzai could fight without restraint. And it was obvious that Jingzai came prepared. He did not dare to have the slightest neglect. The seven-colored glazed dragon chi was boiling all over his body, lingering around his small body, making his body appear magical and translucent. He soared into the sky and spat out seven-colored dragon flames. The amazing power of the elements directly swept in front of him, directly meeting the thunder dragon summoned by Jingzai. At this time, Jingzai's face did not relax in the slightest. This was a collision between psionic powers. He knew that Wang Muyu was extremely talented. He had condensed the power of 10,000 dragons in his body, had thousands of changes, and could use the abilities of every kind of dragon. This was the most terrifying thing about Wang Muyu. However, in Jingzai's view, this was also a fatal flaw before he had completely cultivated it. No matter how many dragon abilities one had, it would be useless if they were not proficient in all of them. Obviously, Wang Muyu had also thought of this. Therefore, he had integrated a variety of elemental powers in the dragon flames at the same time, wanting to use this hodgepodge method to make up for the shortcomings. You haven't cultivated to the peak. Everything is in vain, Jingzai said coldly. His face was solemn. He had already developed the potential of the lightning dragon to the extreme, and was completely unafraid of the seven-colored dragon flames spewed by Wang Muyu. The powerful thunder dragon's breath formed a huge pillar of light, as if the heavens were collapsing, and directly offset the dragon flames spewed by Wang Muyu. It was a combination of a variety of dragon abilities, but it still could not compare to Jingzai's top-notch lightning dragon power, which made Wang Muyu unhappy. Compared to the last time, Jingzai had made too much progress. Even under the guidance of Baizhi, such a growth rate was amazing. At one point, it was even close to surpassing him. Wang Muyu thought that his growth potential was the best among all the dragon descendants, but he didn't expect it to be the same. Of course, putting aside talent, Jingzai might have used other methods to quickly raise his level. But in such a short period of time, how was it done? Wang Muyu's expression did not change. His first move had allowed him to know Jingzai's strength as a top-notch lightning dragon. In the next moment, he stretched out his small hand and slammed it on the ground with his palm facing down in a half-squatting posture. An explosion sounded out as the ground trembled. Numerous elemental dragons soared into the air from the ground, giving off a heaven-shaking sound as the heavens and earth started to tremble. Seeing this scene, Jingzai raised his eyebrows. This was too wasteful. He didn't take spiritual power consumption into consideration at all. No matter how heaven-defying a person was, in modern terms, there was still a blue bar. It was impossible to use skills without limit. Thus, in a duel between top experts, consumption would be taken into account during the fight, and they would calculate the time to release the corresponding ability at the right time, thus setting the pace of the entire fight. Jingzai could also tell from his probing that while Wang Muyu's rich and overbearing style of play meant that this little guy had unlimited spirit energy, it was also a sign that he lacked combat experience. Let him exhaust himself, and we'll definitely win. A voice from the other side of the universe rang out in Jingzai's mind. It was a familiar man's voice, and if Wang Ling had been present, he would have easily recognized this person. On the other side of the universe, a huge dragon the size of a star was entrenched there. Emitting holy moonlight, it issued commands from the depths of the infinite Milky Way as it remotely commanded Jingzai. This was a type of long-range microcontrol. Baizhi had entered the field. Jingzai didn't obstruct Baizhi's judgment, and instead used his own methods to provide support and assistance. In order to divert Wang Ling's attention, he had painstakingly planned this eternal chess game in order to bring Wang Muyu back. Wang Muyu was the most crucial chess piece in his plan. Today he had chosen to let Jingzai take action, and he himself was personally in command. This was a determined attitude. With someone backing him, Jingzai naturally had nothing to fear. He opened his black umbrella, and at that moment, activated its other form. Wang Muyu's eyes were shaken. He hadn't expected this black umbrella to actually have a bow form. The moment the black umbrella opened, The ribs rearranged themselves under Jing Zhe's control to turn into a pitch-black bow and arrow wrapped in black lightning. The handle of the umbrella separated on the spot, and the hook at the end spun to perfectly latch onto the black umbrella's bowstring, directly turning it into a giant arrow. The endless power of lightning jumped and surged on the bow and arrow, as if it had absorbed the power of lightning from the entire universe. Then, boom! With a deafening explosion, Jing Zhe abruptly fired the bow and arrow that the black umbrella had turned into with tremendous power. Space shattered inch by inch as it whistled through the air, and even the inner wall of the core world started to shake under the tremendous impact. If it wasn't for Baijia's support in secret, the core world might have already collapsed. With astonishing power, the giant arrow streaked across the sky with an overbearing momentum as it directly pierced through Wang Muyu and the elemental dragon that he had summoned. Then, guided by Jing Zhe's lightning, the lightning arrow returned to his hand in the blink of an eye, becoming a perpetual motion, like a bullet that would never run out of bullets. The elemental dragons that Wang Muyu had summoned came in all shapes and sizes, and filled this small space. However, Jing Zhe had used his black umbrella to transform it into a bow and arrow to destroy them one by one, which was something Wang Muyu had never expected. To Wang Muyu's horror, Jing Zhe's arrow did not simply pierce through his elemental WIREM. Instead, it seemed to have absorbed the power of the elemental WIREM. Every time it was retracted, the power was like a stream that was constantly being superimposed on the arrow. By the time Wang Muyu saw through Jing Zhe's intentions, and wanted to retrieve the elemental dragon, it was already too late. Jing Zhe, who had already dealt with the last elemental dragon, had already aimed the arrow at Wang Muyu. Then he pulled the bow fully and released it. Chapter 1895. Wang Muyu was in danger. At that moment, in East's great emperor's body, Wang Ling was lost in thought for a moment in front of the Peng family's headquarters on planet Penglai. This was a sixth sense for danger. Even though Wang Ling was now in a world that transcended time and space, he could still sense it. Wang Muyu was now like a younger brother to Wang Ling. Although they didn't usually communicate much, there was already a faint feeling that he couldn't let go of. Wang Ling had always been very wooden, and didn't understand what this feeling was. But he knew that he would never just send Wang Muyu to Baijia. In fact, Wang Ling had already made plans for Wang Muyu's safety. After Qin Zong and Xiang Yi had taken up the positions of guest elders in Battle Sect, the first secret mission they had received was actually to protect Wang Muyu. At that moment, even if Wang Ling didn't say anything, these two strongest bodyguards could sense this danger that transcended time and space. Something happened to little brother Muyu, Qin Zong said in the team voice spell. In order not to disturb Lotus Sun's marriage proposal test, he could only talk to Xiang Yi alone. Did Baijia make a move? Xiang Yi asked. That's right. Judging from his combat strength, he's still a dragon descendant. Qin Zong frowned slightly. I now have reason to suspect that we were arranged to go to eternity as part of their plan. They want to take the opportunity to attack little brother Muyu. Speaking up to this point, Xiang Yi, who was playing the role of North Emperor, suddenly smiled. Unfortunately, they found the wrong person. After all, it was Wang Ling's job to protect Wang Muyu, so Qin Zong and Xiang Yi were extremely serious. As they talked, they used their own heaven-defying methods to find out most of the situation in the modern cultivation world. Yo, this kid is pretty arrogant. He even uses a bow and arrow. Interesting. When Xiang Yi saw Jing Zhe transform that black umbrella into a bow and arrow, he started to get a little excited. Qin Zong seemed to have guessed what Xiang Yi was going to do. So you want to snipe him? I do that a lot. Xiang Yi scratched his head. And my bullets will never rust. Although it's a different timeline, I think it shouldn't be hard to snipe him. Nguyen Zhenren seems to be ready to make a move as well. I just need to buy some time. In the past, Xiang Yi's sniping targets were a lot of cutting-edge alien technology. But now, the target of sniping was actually a bow and arrow classified as a dragon descendant magic weapon. This new experience also made Xiang Yi eager to try. His 9-yang divine sword was a powerful super heavy sniper rifle. He wondered what would happen if he were to face off against this bow and arrow of an immemorial dragon descendant. Thinking of this, Xiangyi couldn't stay any longer. He quickly said to Qinzong, "Excuse me, I'll go find a seat. Little brother Muyu is in danger. Do you want me to stand on the side? Can I give you some assistance?" Qinzong asked. "No, I'll be back soon." Xiangyi shook his head and said, "Boom." On the other side, Jingzai's diamond glove and the black umbrella that had transformed into a bow glowed at the same time. The two most powerful dragon descendant artifacts surged with endless lightning, and at the same time, they emitted a kind of holy moonlight. That was the power that Baizhi had bestowed upon him from afar. When this arrow was shot, all things were destroyed. It was as if a god had descended onto the world, as if it could pierce through everything. Wang Muyu's expression changed. He could feel the power contained in this arrow. It was truly astonishing. The moment Jingzai let go, the heavy lightning pressed forward like overturning seawater. It had the effect of moonlight tracking, which was an additional ability of Baizhi's. No matter how Wang Muyu dodged, this arrow would still stab him. This was an arrow with 100% hit rate. It was only then that Wang Muyu realized the difference in tactics between him and Jingzai. It wasn't that his strength was inferior to Jingzai's, but it was completely due to his lack of combat experience that caused the situation before him. More importantly, Wang Muyu hadn't expected the black umbrella in Jingzai's hand to have such an effect. It could transform into a bow. This was an unstoppable attack. Wang Muyu knew that he would definitely be hit, but he still put up a last-ditch struggle. Otherwise, the arrow would hit his vitals. He worked hard to calculate the power and distance of the arrow. Finally, at the moment of impact, he used the gravity dragon's ability to reconfigure the surrounding space's gravity to buy himself some time. However, the power of Jingzai's arrow was too strong. This kind of delay was like trying to put out a burning cart of firewood with a cup of water. He couldn't block the huge power of this arrow. The arrow directly pierced through his left shoulder, creating a thunderstorm. 7-colored glass dragon blood instantly gushed out, splattering all over the ground. "You can't escape." Jingzai's face was expressionless. He raised his hand, and lightning surged in his palm. Once again, he used the power of lightning to call back the arrow. This time, the arrow was mixed with the power of Wang Muyu's glass dragon blood, causing the arrow's ability to reach a new level. He didn't want to kill Wang Muyu, but he brought out 100% of his combat power. Jingzai knew very well that this was the only way he could seriously injure this talented little guy who had fused with the 10,000 dragon gene, and brought him back. At this time, Wang Muyu had already been hit by his arrow. As long as the second arrow hit, Wang Muyu would no longer be able to resist. "Is the revival of the dragon race that important to you, Jingzai?" Wang Muyu asked. He didn't understand why Jingzai would pursue this so painstakingly. He didn't even hesitate to bend his knees and be driven by evil people. He felt that there was still a sense of justice in Jingzai's body. He shouldn't have been used by Baizhi like that. The glory of the dragon race was already history. The destruction of the dragon race had nothing to do with modern cultivators. Wang Muyu didn't understand why this beautiful era had to be destroyed. Why did they have to return to the world of hegemony, plunder, survival of the fittest, and the supremacy of strength? You've been in contact with human cultivators for too long. Naturally, you won't understand. This is also the reason why I have to bring you back, Jingzai said. His expression was calm, and there was no emotional fluctuation. He was like an emotionless killing machine, aiming his arrow at Wang Muyu. "You don't have any chance." After saying that, he let go of his hand. However, the moment he let go of his hand, suddenly, a brilliant silver beam of light seemed to have pierced through the end of the universe. With the aura of endless time, it pierced straight through. This was a beautiful silver bullet. Jingzai's pupils instantly dilated as if there was an earthquake. He had never thought that there would be such a bullet shooting at him from a strange angle. Boom. The next second, accompanied by an explosive sound, the silver bullet accurately hit the arrow wrapped in lightning and moonlight. Chapter 1896. This silver bullet had come from beyond the sky with astonishing accuracy, and it had pierced through the core world. Before it hit the arrow, it had directly punched a huge hole in the outer wall of the core world. Who could have shot a bullet with such power? Even Jingza was shocked. He had never seen such powerful modern cultivation technology. In order to ensure that there were no obstacles in the way of the Dragon Clan's revival, Jingza had previously assessed the level of modern human cultivation society in all aspects. This wasn't the power of any heavy sniper rifle on Earth at all. He couldn't figure out who on Earth could fire such a powerful bullet to stop him. But judging from the method, this person clearly wasn't Wang Ling. He and Baizhi had discussed Wang Ling's behavior in depth before, and this was someone who would slap someone at the slightest disagreement. Long-range sniping like this clearly wasn't Wang Ling's style. This is a bullet fired from eternity. In the boundless and deep universe, Baizhi's ethereal voice came from the planet formed by the enormous moonlight dragon's body, which rumbled like a great Tao bell in the universe, making Jingza's heart fill with awe. Dragon Lord, don't worry, my venerable self is by your side. This bullet is just a way to stall for time. Baizhi spoke with great confidence. After all, his opponent wasn't Wang Ling, and he believed that he had a way to deal with this situation. With Baizhi's backing, Jingza was clearly much more confident. He took a deep breath and pulled back the bowstring in his hand. A second arrow was fired at Wang Muyu, but at the same time, the silver bullet from beyond the sky arrived again with great precision. With a swoosh, it cut through the air and pierced the outer wall of the core world, sharp and precise. At the same time, Baizhi also acted. From a distant position he infused moonlight into Jingza, which turned into a bright moon behind him. In a split second, endless cold air surged forth, as if it had the mystical power to freeze the highest heavens. The silver bullet slowed down significantly under this freezing power. Wang Muyu could see that this wasn't a simple freeze, but a type of moon god ice that could completely freeze time and space. This was one of Moonlight Dragon's most powerful skills. When they first met, Baizhi hadn't shown this power. Now, however, he was able to control it. This shocked Wang Muyu. He was clearly a usurper who had nothing to do with the dragon race. He had merely taken the identity of a moonlight dragon, yet he had been able to comprehend the dragon race's ultimate technique to this level. Boom! Wang Muyu opened his mouth and spat out a glass-like flame. This was originally the dragon race's restraining technique to neutralize moon god ice. When the moon god ice met the colored glass flame, one could clearly feel the moon god ice evaporating under the colored glass flame's heat. However, Wang Muyu's proficiency with the colored glass flame was clearly not high, and one could feel that he was already working very hard to spit out fire. However, Baizhi's moon god ice was a level higher. Under the powerful freezing power, the colored glass flame's restraining effect was like trying to put out a cart of firewood with a cup of water. Is this the pride of the Dragon Clan that you spoke of, Jingza? Wang Muyu was furious. As a descendant of the dragon race, he had to watch as someone who didn't belong to the Dragon Clan usurped the throne. This made him very angry. He asked loudly in a childish voice. His voice seemed to emanate from his bones, and it had a natural and clean quality to it. This caused Jingza's gaze to change slightly. However, he quickly recovered his cold expression and stared at Wang Muyu. As long as the Dragon Clan can rise again, it doesn't matter to me who the leader is. He replied to Wang Muyu. Crack! Everything happened in an instant. Under Baizhi's cover, the moon god ice spread along the trajectory of the second silver bullet. It froze everything around it and froze the bullet in the air. However, the next second, there was a huge explosion in the air. Jingza hadn't expected the second bullet to be a spell trap. As soon as it was stopped by an external force, it would immediately explode. A huge mushroom cloud rose up from the core world. The powerful shockwave affected the arrow's trajectory, causing Jingza's second arrow to miss. I knew it would be like this. In the distance, Xiang Yi sneered. He held the Nine-Yang Divine Sword in his hand, and his expression relaxed. His mission had been completed. After all, he was in the past, and it was too difficult to snipe across time and space. It would be better to leave the rest to spiritual Master Nuan. After the spirit explosion, Jingza and Baizhi waited in place for a while. The third bullet that had traveled across time did not arrive. Baizhi knew clearly that the number of bullets in this time was limited. The third bullet would not arrive in a short time. It seems that no one will stop us anymore. He sighed and gave Jingzi the next order. Now was the best time to capture Wang Muyu. Jingzi nodded slightly. He called back the arrow and put his hand on the bowstring again. However, unlike before, there seemed to be an artifact tied to the arrow's head. It was a giant sealing net called the 10,000 scale dragon net. It was a magic artifact that Baizhi had specially created to imprison Wang Muyu. It was made from tens of thousands of dragon scales, and the moment it appeared, it produced an incomparably dazzling divine light. This net was also a dragon descendant magic artifact, and it was at the light level. In order to capture Wang Muyu, Baizhi had definitely gone to great lengths. This was the last attack, and unless Wang Ling came in person, Jingzi felt that no one could stop it. Blood seeped from the corner of Wang Muyu's mouth. He hadn't given up, and was releasing the last of his dragon chi to resist. However, with the 10,000 scale dragon net here, it was useless no matter what he did. Chi. Another arrow. And it was an arrow with the 10,000 scale dragon net. At the same time, from an extremely far distance, Wang Ling's gaze fell on the first scene at the same time. But he didn't make a move, because he knew very well that Jingzi's arrow would be stopped. With a puff, a green light flew down from the distance like an aurora and directly resisted the power of the two dragon descendant magic artifacts, the arrow and the 10,000 scale dragon net. Damn it! Why is there another one? Jingzi was a little impatient. One person after another jumped out to stop him, which made him extremely annoyed. Then he calmed down and saw clearly what was stopping his two dragon descendant magic artifacts. He was shocked, because it turned out to be a green blade of grass. Is this a sword spirit? In a trance, Jingzi frowned, feeling like he had seen this familiar scene before. Yeah. In the next second, a small body broke through the air, and directly smashed through the outer wall of the inner world with its diaper covered but forcing its way in. He looked at the baby girl who had suddenly barged in. At that moment, Jingzi was horrified. Chapter 1897. The moment Leng Ming and Wang Nuan arrived, Jingzi cursed in his heart, because in just a few short minutes, the outer walls of his inner world had already been broken through one after another. If it wasn't for the eternal moon starlight, which had a certain self-healing effect, the outer walls of his inner world would already be riddled with holes. Yeah, Wang Nuan appeared. Her small body contained a tremendous amount of spirit power, and Jingzi was completely taken aback. It wasn't that he and Baizhi had forgotten this. They had already seen how terrifying this little girl was. It was just that she was too young, and they had thought that even if Wang Nuan took action, they would be able to handle her. But now, Baizhi and Jingzi realized that they had still underestimated this little girl's ability to grow. This terrifying little girl's aura was too ferocious. She wasn't even half a year old, but she was like a prehistoric beast. Every day, her body underwent earth-shattering changes. What would happen if she grew up? Thus, in that instant, Baizhi had the feeling that even if Wang Ling was now trapped in the eternal world, the fear of being at the mercy of the old Wang family came back to haunt him. But he refused to admit it, and thought that the person he was facing was just a baby who was nothing to be afraid of. He immediately ordered Jingzi, "Catch Wang Muyu and kill her." Seeing a tiny baby body standing in front of another tiny body, he roared furiously. Without any hesitation, he gave Jingzi a death order. Wang Nuan was too strong. The most logical course of action was to kill her before she fully matured. As he spoke, Jingzi attacked again. The arrow in his hand turned into an astonishing electric dragon with a radius as large as a small mountain, as it swiftly flew toward Wang Nuan. However, all their attention was focused on Wang Nuan, and they ignored the little green grass that had arrived at the same time as her. Leng Ming had become stronger, and his body had become sturdier as he continued to cultivate in the Sword King world. He leaped through the air like a fairy, fearless in the face of Jingzi. A little grass could cut down the sun, the moon and the stars, and Leng Ming could do it now. What was even more surprising to Jingzi was that this powerful little grass. Leng Ming was naturally unafraid of lightning. He charged directly at the lightning dragon. The emerald green sword light burst forth from below, like an Arctic meteor transforming into a huge grass dragon, colliding with the lightning dragon. Then, the lightning dragon and the arrow were completely swallowed up. Lung Ming's strength had once again exceeded the scope of Jing Zai's understanding. He had seen this blade of grass before, but it was far from being as difficult to deal with as it was now. Coupled with Lung Ming's natural restraining ability, Jing Zai was at a loss for a moment. He knew that the 5 elements restrained each other, so he tried to use thunder and lightning to detonate the divine fire to burn Lung Ming. Unexpectedly, Lung Ming was not even afraid of fire. Instead, Lung Ming, who was covered in flames, erupted with an even stronger combat power. Using strange arcs in the void, he continuously displayed his exquisite movement technique. Finally, the heavenly fire descended. From the horizon, it turned into a rain of fire and rained down. Seeing the divine fire descend, Jing Zai finally panicked. He originally thought that according to the 5 elements restrained each other, Lung Ming would be extremely afraid of fire. However, he did not expect that this blade of grass would actually overcome this weakness and turn the divine fire burning on his body into his own. He gritted his teeth and was forced to change the bow and arrow in his hand back into the form of the black umbrella, to block the divine fire shower in front of him. There was a time limit for the black umbrella's transformation, and there was a period of time between each transformation. This also meant that Jing Zai would not be able to use that troublesome bow and arrow for a period of time. Having achieved his goal, Lung Ming landed on the ground and took root. He calmly watched as the divine fire burned his body to ashes. Was he committing suicide? No. In the distance, Jing Zai narrowed his eyes. He realized that the land where Lung Ming was had been burned bare. However, at this moment, a gust of wind blew past, and the emerald green grass on the ground emerged once again. This was the spring wind brings life again spell, a consummate skill that Lung Ming had comprehended from the Sword King world. As long as there was land, he didn't fear any fire. Fire indeed restrained him, including the piercing pain when the divine fire had burned him just now. However, he had now cultivated to a level where he could face it calmly. At that moment, Jing Zai felt a little overwhelmed. He couldn't even break through a sword spirit, let alone deal with the baby behind him. With Lung Ming's help, Wang Nuan had already taken care of Wang Muyu's injuries. It was only then that Wang Muyu realized to his shock that his Auntie Nuan's diapers weren't ordinary diapers. They were simply a mobile magic treasure trove that could be used in anything. She took out all kinds of bottles and jars of medicine, and without saying a word, she directly opened the caps and poured them into Wang Muyu's mouth. These bottles and jars were all elixirs that he had refined in his spare time. Almost all of them were crispy noodle snacks, and when Wang Muyu ate them, he felt a sense of familiarity. As a descendant of the 10,000 dragons, Wang Muyu's greatest advantage was that he had a strong physique, and wouldn't die no matter how many supplements he took. Given this situation, Wang Nuan didn't care about the effects at all, and directly sat on Wang Muyu's body and fed him bottle after bottle. This could definitely be called the most powerful feeding in history. After all, Wang Ling had refined these elixirs, and their effects alone were several times stronger than those of ordinary elixirs. Thus, when the effects of these supplements collided in Wang Muyu's body, he felt as if a grand fireworks party was going on inside him, and countless fireworks started to collide inside him. Not only had Jing Zai's arrow wound healed at a speed visible to the naked eye, Wang Muyu had even vaguely sensed that he was about to break through. After pouring out the last bottle of pills, Wang Nuan thought that she had completed the first step of her work. She turned and flew down from Wang Muyu's body. She stood upright and floated in the void, staring at the cleansing lake in the void. This was the gaze of the master of Shadow Dao, and it made Jing Zai's hair stand on end. At that moment, Wang Nuan had already decided to do it herself. With a wave of her hand, she summoned Lung Ming to her side, then climbed onto Lung Ming's sturdy shoulder, and directly commanded her sword spirit as a mount. Lung Ming's little face was full of care and love. He completely obeyed Wang Nuan's instructions and gave her complete command. This was also a disguised form of becoming one with the sword, which gave Jing Zai an ominous feeling. Boom. In the next moment, Wang Nuan made her move. Riding on Lung Ming's shoulder, the two figures arrived almost instantaneously, so fast that Jing Zhe couldn't react. A small palm slapped forward and landed precisely on the right side of Jing Zhe's face, instantly cracking his teeth. Chapter 1898. It was hard to imagine that a palm the size of a baby's, which looked as soft as cotton, could actually slap someone mercilessly. This small slap pushed Jing Zhe back 100 li in the inner world, and he slid on the ground face first, directly plowing out an abyss. It was just a simple slap, but Jing Zhe was already dizzy from the slap, and a trace of fear finally appeared on his expressionless face. It was a fear that came from the depths of his soul, because this slap was all too familiar to him. It was like a memory that had been engraved in his bones since the last time he had been slapped, and he couldn't forget it. When he got up from the bottom of the abyss, Jing Zhe had already tried very hard to convince himself that the other party was just a little baby who didn't need to fear him at all. But his body still couldn't stop trembling. Thus, Jing Zhe abruptly erupted. He circulated all his spirit energy and spread his dragon wings wide open, and the sparkling and translucent dragon bones shone with a rich luster under the swirling lightning. Wang Yuan was well aware that this was fear. Although she wasn't very old, she was still sensitive to emotions. Everyone faced fear in different ways. Jing Zhe's apparent outburst was in fact a cover-up. Roaring, he charged to the front and scattered lightning to every corner of the inner world. As he roared, thunder god whips broke out of the ground one after another. Tens of thousands of thunder god whips broke out of the ground, and like tentacles, they swayed back and forth in the inner world. The power of the old world? Lung Ming frowned. His Shifus had warned him before that he had to be on guard against the revival of the old world. This was also the focus of Jinka and Bai Qiao's training for Lung Ming. As the future successor of Sword King World, Lung Ming had studied very seriously at the time, and had a certain level of understanding of the old world. It was a mysterious and terrifying history that symbolized darkness and devouring. No one hoped that the power of the old world would resurface in an era of peace. It wasn't just the modern cultivation world. Even Sword King World and other worlds had to be on guard against the emergence of this power. And the biggest symbol of the old world was those mysterious tentacles. Wang Yuan had eaten a few of them before, and they hadn't tasted good. Fortunately, they had done their homework in advance, and neither Lung Ming nor Wang Yuan was afraid at all. They had thought that Jing Zhe would come up with something more interesting after his outburst, but in the end, it was only at this level, which disappointed Wang Yuan. As the younger sister, she wanted to surpass her brother, but her brother was really too strong. Who knew how long it would take for him to surpass Wang Ling based on his talent alone? The point was that while she was growing, her brother would also grow. If both of them grew, how long would it take for them to catch up? Therefore, Wang Yuan's goal was very clear. Although she had only been born a few months ago, her small body already had great ambitions. She had thought it through very thoroughly. The only way to surpass her brother was to constantly fight and temper herself in battle. Who would have thought that at the critical moment, Wang Ling would have to resort to such a lousy method? It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was a small fry. If one looked down on Wang Yuan just by looking at her, and felt that as long as they could defeat her with a strange spell that surpassed her age, they would be underestimating the youngest of the Wang family. As the master of Shadow Dao, wherever there was light, there would be shadows, and using shadows to counterattacks was what Wang Yuan was best at. The lightning that Jing Zhe had released actually created an excellent environment for Wang Yuan. Unhurriedly, she sat on Lung Ming's neck and began to circulate all the spirit energy in her body. Boom! On the surface of the core world, countless pitch-black tentacles reached out from underground. These were all shadows that Wang Yuan had replicated. Their might was equivalent to these lightning whips, and the moment they appeared, they formed an equal suppression against the tentacles that Jing Zhe had summoned. Then, taking advantage of this counterbalance, Wang Yuan extended her tentacles again. But this time, it was Wang Yuan's little foot that touched Jing Zhe's face. The instant this little flying leg kicked toward Jing Zhe, the huge force it formed exploded on Jing Zhe's face, distorting the void and completely tearing it apart. The seemingly ordinary flying leg was actually too powerful. In that instant, Jingzai felt as if his face had been swept by a huge mountain, and he was immediately sent flying. He spat out a large mouthful of blood, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. So powerful. Even Lung Ming was dumbfounded. Although he knew that Wang Nuan was very powerful, he didn't expect her to be so ferocious and domineering. For a moment, as Wang Nuan's sword spirit, Lung Ming felt a lot of pressure. Before he knew it, he had already been swept away. In order to become a sword spirit that was worthy of Wang Nuan, Lung Ming felt that he had to work harder. Cough. Jingzai crawled up from the ground for the second time. This was already the second time that he had been attacked in the face. His body was covered in blood, and he looked to be in a very bad condition. The dragon wings on his back had already been fractured, and even a few dragon scales had been shaved off by Wang Nuan. He kept coughing up blood, but his expression still showed no signs of admitting defeat. On the other side, Wang Nuan had no intention of letting Jingzai go. After all, Wang Muyu was injured. Although she had fed him a lot of tonics, Wang Nuan felt that it was not enough to vent her anger just by hitting him twice. Therefore, after hitting Jingzai twice, she was actually waiting for Jingzai's injuries to recover. After all, Jingzai's injuries could be quickly healed with the eternal moon starlight that Baizha had given him. To Wang Nuan, this was excellent news. Because Jingzai's rapid recovery meant two things. One was that he could let her fight to her heart's content. On the other hand, it was a very special way to gain combat experience. Although Jingzai wasn't very strong, he had a lot of health. Although his strength was too weak, as long as his body was sturdy enough, he could barely make it as an opponent. Therefore, Wang Nuan calculated that Jingzai had more or less recovered, and attacked again. The boundless spiritual energy in her body exploded at this moment, turning into endless lightning. This was a technique that she had learned from Jingzai using her Shadow Dao ability. This was truly giving him a taste of his own medicine. Lightning is useless against me. Jingzai laughed. He was mocking Wang Nuan for actually trying to use lightning against him. However, very quickly, he was slapped in the face by Wang Nuan again. This was because in the next second, the head hammer that contained the power of lightning smashed onto his body again. Moreover, it was aimed at his vitals. He was hit accurately on the spot. In that instant, Jingzai felt as if his body had been struck by lightning. He instantly let out a painful scream. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.